A medieval child does not enter the world gently. There is no quiet delivery room, no sterile instruments, no epidurals, just a single flickering candle, the screaming of the mother, and a world waiting to harm you. It begins in darkness, not just the night outside, but the kind of darkness that settles in the rafters of a wooden hut, low and smoky, where light from the hearth struggles to reach the corners. The air smells of soot, old straw, and panic. Outside, the wind howls across the moors, rattling the loose shutters and hissing through the thatch above. But inside, something more ancient is happening, something sacred, something dangerous. Tonight, you are being born. Your mother lies on a rough wooden plank bed, her skin slick with sweat and fear, her fingers clawing at the blanket beneath her, as another contraction seizes her body. She is surrounded, not by doctors in white coats or comforting machines, but by two women from the village, the midwife, and her assistant, sometimes called a gossiper. There is no formal training, no years of medical school, just generations of passed down knowledge, superstition and guesswork, delivered with bloodied hands and whispered prayers. The midwife is old, her hands knotted like tree roots, her breath heavy with ale and cloves. She mutters a Latin chant she only half understands as she pours scalding water into a wooden basin. She's not entirely sure what the water does, but she's seen it used before, and rituals are sometimes the only medicine they have. On the floor lies a rusty knife, a coil of wool thread, and a dried frog, strung with red string, hung on a nail for protection. It's been blessed, or cursed by the local priest, and that's good enough for her. Your mother screams again, louder now, a sound so raw it scrapes the soul. The candle flickers. The animals in the corner, two hens, a goat and a piglet, shift nervously. They are witnesses too, whether they want to be or not. In this one-room cottage, everyone shares everything, even moments like this. And now we wait, hours maybe. Time stretches and twists. The pain is endless. No painkillers, no sedation, just biting down on a leather strap or the edge of your own tongue, and hoping the child comes before the mother fades away. Sometimes she doesn't. Complications are frequent, and there is no doctor to call. If the baby is breech feet first or the labor too long, there are only two choices: pray or cut, and cutting in the Middle Ages is usually the end of one or both lives. Caesarean sections are almost always fatal. They are a last resort, and most often performed only when the mother is already dead or dying, in a desperate attempt to save the infant or at least baptize it before it too slips away. But tonight, somehow your mother survives. There, you arrive with a wet gasp and a cry, slick with blood and vernix, your tiny lungs announcing your existence to a world that didn't ask for you and doesn't care if you stay. The midwife slaps your bottom, not gently, not ceremoniously, but out of necessity. If you don't cry, you don't breathe, and if you don't breathe, you die. You are handed to your mother, briefly. There are no baby blankets, no sterilized towels, just a piece of old linen, barely clean, already stained with the memory of other births, other blood. Your mother clutches you weakly, her fingers trembling. She is exhausted. Her face is pale, eyes hollow. She has lost too much blood, but she is alive, and so are you. For now, that's enough. The midwife goes to work. The afterbirth must come next. It does, with another wave of pain, and is examined briefly to ensure nothing remains inside. If any piece is left, it will rot, and she will die. There is no internal scan, no checkup, no antibiotics, just luck, skill, and the mercy of the saint. The midwife wraps the placenta in old cloth and buries it in the yard under the moonlight, muttering a prayer to Saint Margaret, the patron saint of childbirth. If she forgets this, it is said the baby will be cursed with a wandering soul. Back inside, you are tied off at the umbilical cord with wool thread, and the cord itself is sliced through with a knife that has seen everything from pigs to potatoes. Infection is a daily reality. Death is a frequent visitor. The midwife may rub salt on your skin, or wine, if the family has it, less for sanitation, and more to toughen you. You scream again, you will do that a lot in this life. There is no birth certificate, your name is not yet certain. That will depend on whether you live until morning, or the week, or the month. Many don't. Some families don't bother naming the child until they're sure it will stay. Infant mortality is staggering. Perhaps as many as 1 in 3 newborns will die before their first birthday. And most families have lost a child, or 2, or 5. So the household stays quiet, watchful. No songs, no celebration, just waiting. Welcome to the world. It doesn't want you here. Your cradle is a basket, lined with straw and wool. Or maybe just a small wooden box next to the hearth. If it's winter, you might freeze. If it's summer, you might cook. Fires are tricky things, warmth or death depending on where you're placed. There are no carbon monoxide alarms, no safety regulations, just instinct, luck, and a mother too tired to blink. Your mother will attempt to nurse you if she can. If not, a wet nurse may be found, but only if the family is wealthy or desperate. Otherwise, gruel will be spooned into your mouth from goat's milk, and mashed barley, or perhaps soaked bread chewed by another's mouth, passed down like a blessing or a curse. The water is too filthy to drink, the animals are too important to share milk with a human mouth. And even the goats are sick sometimes. Outside, the world continues, uncaring. The village priest rings the bell. A child has been born. That means a baptism must happen. So immediately, if possible. The priest might be summoned in the middle of the night, dragging his robes through the muck, groggy but grimly focused. Not out of sentiment, but salvation. If you die unbaptized, they believe your soul will wander. You won't go to heaven, you won't go to hell, you'll go to limbo, a grey purgatory of forever waiting. That's what they've been told, that's what they tell themselves. So they act fast. Even if your mother can't walk, even if the roads are full of mud and wool, you are wrapped in a cloth and carried to the stone church at the edge of the village. The wind is cold, the sky is low. Inside, the stone is colder still, and the water in the baptismal font is near freezing. But it is holy. The priest mumbles Latin phrases as he pours it over your head. You gasp. The water feels like a slap. But you are now baptized. The family breathes again. Not because you're safe, but because your soul at least won't be lost if you die tonight. They name you after a saint. Always a saint. Maybe St. John if you're lucky. Maybe St. Job, if the family is ironic. Or St. Apollonia, if your mother has toothaches and hopes to pass the pain along to you. Names are hopes, or prayers, or protection. You'll need all 3. Back home, your mother lies still. She is feverish, or silent, or already asleep, eyes open. If she dies in the coming days, no one will be surprised. Puerperal fever is common, nearly inevitable in some households. It spreads through unwashed hands, reused linens, and shared suffering. But they don't know that. They think it's sin, or punishment, or bad air. And if you survive, your work begins. Not yet, of course. Not today. But soon. Sooner than you expect. Childhood is not a protected state. It is a holding pattern. Until usefulness. You'll be expected to contribute before you can fully walk. But for now, you are wrapped again in that old linen, tight as a drum, swaddled to keep your limbs from flailing. They believe it helps you grow straight. It does not. But you are bound anyway. You cry. It's the only power you have. The only protest. Someone hushes you, not gently. A finger over the mouth. A shush like a hiss. Crying wastes energy. Crying wakes others. Crying brings rats. Yes, even rats. They come for the milk. For warmth. For the soft scent of blood. Every sound is a risk. So you sleep. Fitfully. If you sleep. The room is never quiet. There's coughing. Snoring. The cluck of chickens, the groan of beams above, wind rattles. A neighbor argues with his wife outside, their voices seeping through the walls like smoke. And tomorrow someone else might be born, or buried, or both. You are not special, not in this century, not in this village. You are one of many, most of whom will not see adulthood. But you are here, and that is something. For now, you are wrapped in rags, lying on a bed of straw, under a roof that leaks, in a world that fears demons more than germs, and sin more than suffering. You don't know it yet, but your childhood has already started, and it will hurt. Chapter 2. The long day begins. A child's life of toil and terror. Congratulations again. You've survived childbirth, just barely, and now you're 5 winters old, which, in medieval terms, makes you practically a professional at surviving plagues, famine, and falling into open fires. Don't get too confident though. Your odds of making it to your 10th birthday still aren't great, but for now, you're alive, and in 1340, that's enough to qualify as a miracle. Let's talk about your morning. There is no snooze button. There is no bed really, just a flat worm-riddled board covered in the same bug-ridden straw your whole family sleeps on. You wake up before dawn, not because of some romantic rooster crow, but because your baby sister is screaming from hunger. Your older brother just rolled over and elbowed you in the face, and someone nearby has begun violently coughing again. Could be your father, could be the plague. Who can tell anymore? The hut is dark, damp, and silent, except for the snoring, coughing, scratching, and general human suffering echoing through the beams. There's no chimney, so the smoke from last night's fire still clings to the air like a ghost that refuses to leave. Your eyes water before you're even vertical. Your blanket, if you have one, it smells like wet dog and an old turnip stew. You'd throw it off in disgust if it weren't the only thing keeping you from freezing solid. Welcome to another glorious day in the life of medieval child. You're not a kid in the modern sense. There are no toys, no cartoons, no cereal with colorful mascots. You are, in every meaningful sense, a very small, very itchy adult. By the age of 5 or 6, you're already expected to work, and not pretend work like washing plastic dishes in a play kitchen. Real work, back-breaking, tedious, soul-flattening work. You rise before the sun to haul water, tend the goats, collect firewood, and if you're especially lucky, help muck out the latrine pit. You thought potty training was bad? Try emptying a wooden bucket full of fermented family waste into the street every morning while dodging chickens and praying it doesn't splash back on your bare feet. And remember, there's no soap, there's barely water. Washing your hands after this medieval morning ritual, a luxury for lords and priests. You just wipe your hands on your tunic and carry on. Hope you weren't planning to eat with those fingers later. Breakfast is, well, the same sludge as yesterday. Pottage. Thick, grey, lumpy. A stew that has been quietly evolving in a single pot for the past 2 weeks. Today's flavor profile is turnip forward, with notes of desperation and mold. You slurp it down from a shared wooden bowl, shared with your siblings, the family dog, and maybe a beetle or two. Protein is protein. Now it's time for chores. And remember, you don't get an allowance. There are no stickers, no gold stars. Your reward for doing your work well is not being beaten. That's it. That's the whole system. You shuffle outside into the mud wearing the same tunic you've had for months. It smells like mildew, cheese, and poor decisions. Your shoes, if you're privileged enough to own them, are bits of leather flapping around your feet, like sad flags of surrender. Most children go barefoot through fields, through puddles, through animal droppings, and occasionally through things you can't even identify. Some of it glows. That's not a good sign. Your first task, scaring crows from the barley field. You stand there in the cold wind, waving your arms at angry birds and yelling nonsense until your throat is sore. It's thankless, repetitive, and boring, and it might be the best part of your day, because next comes the spinning. Wool needs carding, flax needs twisting. Your tiny hands are perfect for the monotonous, finger-splitting task of thread making. Sit on a stool made from a log, surrounded by dust, goats, and your cousin Wilfred, who never stops coughing. You spin, you cough, You scratch. You spin some more. And if your thread is uneven, you might get a rap on the knuckles with a stick. Don't take it personally, it's character building. At midday, if the family isn't totally destitute, there might be a break, a scrap of bread so hard it could double as a building material dipped in thin ale, because again the water will absolutely kill you. You eat quickly, sitting in the shade of your house, watching the dogs fight over a dead pigeon. Then it's back to, maybe you get to gather herbs with your mother, nettles, garlic, wild onions, anything green that isn't obviously poisonous. You're told which plants cause vomiting and which cause death. Sometimes it's a guessing game. Welcome to medieval foraging. If it's winter, your job is simpler: survive. Stay near the fire, conserve energy. Try not to breathe too deeply lest you suck in smoke and get the black lung. Frostbite is common, so are chilblains, blistering, itching patches of red that crack and bleed on your hands and feet. It feels like your skin is rebelling. It probably is. There are no toys, remember. But medieval kids do play, just not in a way modern kids would recognize. Games include throwing bones at rats, chasing each other with sticks, or pretending a rock is a horse. If you're lucky, someone has fashioned a doll out of rags and straw, and if you're really lucky, it hasn't been commandeered by a rat yet. School, only if you're male, wealthy, and not needed on the farm, and even then, it's more about Latin recitation and being smacked with a rod than learning anything fun. Most children never learn to read, but you do learn to count at least enough to tally how many chickens the neighbor stole and how many beatings you're behind on this week. As the sun dips low, your work doesn't stop. You help your mother prepare dinner, again a generous term for boiling yesterday's leftovers until they look like future leftovers. Maybe there's a bit of cabbage today, maybe not. You eat silently. Talking too much wastes energy, and if you live near a town, you might hear distant bells. Curfew. Time to get indoors before the watchmen start beating people for loitering. As darkness settles, the fire goes low. There's no fuel left. You can't waste good firewood on comfort. You curl up beside your siblings, wrapped in the same flea-ridden blanket, listening to the sound of your grandfather muttering in his sleep, and the occasional rat scratching under the floorboards. Sleep doesn't come easily. You're cold, you're itchy, you're hungry, and something in your mouth hurts. Could be a rotten tooth, or just the medieval version of growing pains, which is probably early arthritis. If you're lucky, you'll dream of something better. If not, you'll dream of the plague. Again, it's making the rounds in the next village over. This is childhood. Not sweet, not innocent, not magical. It's just survival in its most basic, brutal and medieval form. The fire has burned low, and your home, if you can call a smoke-blackened one-room mud hut a home, sinks into darkness. There are no windows, just a single wooden shutter that never quite fits its frame. Wind whistles through the gaps, dragging in the cold and the occasional whiff of manure from the street. You lie down again on the same straw bedding you woke up from, which by now is a little damper, a little itchier, and definitely more alive. The lice are thriving, the fleas have organized, and that gentle crunching sound in your pillow, probably beetles. Your body is not a little tired sore, not I need a stretch and a hot bath sore. You're a child who has spent the entire day hauling, chopping, squatting, running, spinning, foraging, and being generally overworked by adults who see you as a laborer with shorter arms. Your muscles ache, your knees are scraped, your stomach grumbles, and your eyes sting from smoke and dust. You'd cry maybe, but tears are a luxury too. Besides, someone might hear and tell you to hush before you invite spirits in. Because yes, now we must speak of the dark. The medieval night is not gentle, it is not peaceful, it is not cozy. It is a terrifying silent ocean of unknowns, without candles too expensive, and with no hearth flame to keep lit. Firewood is precious. Your little home disappears into blackness once the sun sets, the kind of blackness that presses in on your eyes, the kind of blackness that makes you wonder if the world even exists anymore. And in that darkness, fear reigns. The grown-ups speak in whispers now. They tell stories to keep you quiet, but not the kind with princesses or friendly dragons. No, these are stories about witches, who come at night to steal children's breath, about the devil, who walks from house to house after midnight looking for the souls of the lazy, about wild men who live in the woods and eat livestock and sometimes children. You don't know whether these stories are meant to warn you, educate you, or simply amuse your exhausted parents, but they sink deep into your bones. If you live in a village with a church, the local priest might have warned about demons that slip in through cracks in the door. If you live near a forest, your older brother might tell you about the night he saw eyes staring back at him from the tree line. Either way, the result is the same. Your eyes stay open long after your body begs for sleep. There are real dangers. Fires break out in the night and consume entire families. Wild dogs roam the alleys, and they don't always distinguish between refuse and a child too small to fight back. And of course, illness. If someone in your home begins coughing harder in the night, you pull away instinctive. You've seen what happens when the fevers come. Sometimes people simply don't wake up. Still, you eventually drift off, because exhaustion trumps fear. And now enter the dreams. Not the gentle ones. Not flying. Not floating. Not running in sun-drenched fields. Your dreams are full of fire and famine. You dream of hunger. You dream of wolves. You dream of your father being buried in the frozen earth, or of being taken away by a stranger wrapped in black rags. Sometimes you sleep so hard you don't even feel the rat brush your arm as it scurries past. Sometimes you wake up screaming, and when you do, your mother doesn't coddle you. She places a rough hand over your mouth and whispers, "Shh." You'll call them. Who they are is never explained, but the message is clear. Silence is safety. Stillness is survival. You listen to the house breathing. The floor creaks under the weight of your mother shifting. Your grandfather moans in his sleep, muttering Latin words he barely remembers from church. The baby coughs again, and then just for a moment there is silence. You think maybe this is but then, scratch. A sound at the wall. A footstep outside. A creak on the roof. Was it the wind? Or something worse? You close your eyes and pray to Saint Christopher, Saint Agnes, or maybe just to the thatch above you, hoping it holds another night. You imagine what's out there. Robbers. Ghosts. The neighbor boy who swears he saw a headless priest near the well. Your body shakes, not from the cold, this time, but from the ever-present terror of being small, vulnerable, and utterly forgotten in a world that barely notices children exist at all. And yet you survive the night. Just barely. And when the rooster calls, or perhaps a neighbor shouting, or someone vomiting, or your father shaking you awake to start another day, you blink into the gray light of dawn with a sigh. You did it. One more night. One more day. One step closer to adulthood, where, if you survive, you can look forward to back pain, plague, taxes, wars you don't understand, and possibly starving to death in a field. But for now, you are still a child. And tomorrow you'll chase crows again. Chapter 3. The Apprentice Years. Childhood ends early. You are 12 years old. Maybe 10. Maybe 7. No one's exactly sure, not even you. Birth records aren't a thing for peasants, and no one's throwing you a birthday party with candles and a song. You're not even certain what year it is. You've heard it's in the Lord's century, but the numbers are muddled, and no one really cares. What matters is this: you're old enough to work, old enough to be useful, old enough to suffer properly. Your childhood, if it ever existed, is over. There is no adolescence in medieval Europe, no in-between, no angsty years of self-discovery, no school dances, no comic books, no awkward talks about puberty. One day you're a barefoot child, begging for soup. The next, you're an apprentice, property of a master craftsman, a nun, a merchant, or sometimes a blacksmith who's more iron than man. And make no mistake, you are property. Your parents may have placed you with a master, but this is no kindly arrangement. It's a transaction, a contract, usually verbal, maybe sealed with a small fee, or a jug of ale. You're given away like a tool, expected to learn a trade in exchange for room, board, and brutal discipline. You may be apprenticed to a tanner, a weaver, a cooper, a baker, a potter, a shoemaker, or a butcher, or if you're particularly unlucky, a fuller, A man who softens wool by stomping it in buckets of stale urine. Yes, that's a job. And yes, children do it too. Your master does not love you. He barely likes you. You are not his child. You are a liability until proven otherwise. Your training begins at dawn, ends long after dusk, and continues 6 days a week, sometimes 7, because holy rest doesn't apply if there are shoes to be finished, or pigs to be slaughtered. Let's talk about your living conditions. You don't sleep in the master's home. You sleep beneath it, in the cellar, or a cold attic space, or wedged into the corner of the workroom, near the scraps and sawdust. You share this space with rats, other apprentices, and the smells of whatever trade you're learning: tanning, rotting hides, baking, yeast, soot, and sweat, blacksmithing, charcoal, metal dust, and the sharp stench of burnt flesh, sometimes yours. Your meals are worse than what you had at home. Grill, again, moldy bread, maybe a rind of cheese if you're lucky. Your master and his family eat the good part. You get the boiled leftovers, scraped into a wooden bowl you're expected to clean with your tongue and a rag, and still you work. You start with small jobs: fetch the water, stoke the fire, sweep the floor. But if you make a mistake, if the fire dies or the tools go missing, you're punished. Not with a scolding, not with a timeout, with a beating, sometimes with a strap, sometimes with a stick, sometimes with fists. It's called discipline, and everyone agrees it's necessary. Bruises aren't just common, they're expected. Your hands blister, your back knot, your knees go raw from hours of kneeling on stone. You don't cry, or if you do it quietly, in the corner, where the rats won't laugh. The older apprentices haze you, they steal your bread, they shove you face first into the bucket you wash. They whisper warnings about the master's temper, and make you believe he once nailed an apprentice's hand to the wall for dropping a hammer. You don't know if it's true, but you don't want to find out. Sometimes the master has daughters. You're warned not to look at them, or only to look at them, depending on what the master wants. If you're a girl, apprenticed in a manor house, you may be groomed in the worst possible sense, expected to serve not only at the hearth, but also in the bedchamber, and no one talks about it, because no one cares. You're not a person, you're a tool in training, and the training never stops. You're woken before sunrise to scrub boots, beat rugs and chop wood. You work the forge bellows until your arms go numb. You stir dye vats that burn your lung. You carry buckets of urine for the tanner, and get no thanks. You sharpen knives with trembling hands, and every time you falter, you're reminded there are 20 more boys waiting to take your place. When you're finally allowed to learn the actual craft, it's not out of kindness, it's efficiency. The master needs more hands to turn profit, so you begin to carve, stitch, mold or hammer, under his watchful critical eye. You're not praised, you're not encouraged, you're corrected harshly and constantly. And then there's the church. If you're apprenticed to a monastery, congratulations, you now live under the rule of Saint Benedict, which means your life is a rotating wheel of prayer, chores, silence, and more prayer. You rise before dawn, you chant in Latin, you tend the abbey garden, or clean chamber pots for monks who barely remember your name. Some will teach you to read barely, others will beat you for speaking. You are seen but not heard. You are a body, not a soul. Occasionally, if you're lucky, a kind master or monk will take pity on you. Maybe they'll teach you letters. Maybe they'll give you extra food on holidays. Maybe they'll show you how to cheat the weights when selling at market so the customers don't notice they've been robbed. Small acts of grace, micro miracles in a world built on cruelty. Years pass this, and when you're finally free, if you survive, you may become a journeyman, not a master, not yet. That title requires money, connections and time, but you can travel now, look for work, sleep in strange barns, sell your skills for food, and hope no one stabs you for your boots on the road. You're 17, maybe 18, maybe 20. You have no money, no land, no security, but at least you know how to make a boot, or a barrel, or a rosary, or a decent meat pie if you can find meat. You've made it to the next tier of the medieval pyramid. A gear in the machine, a young adult with bad teeth, a hunched back, and the haunted eyes of someone who's seen a little too much too soon. And one day, if you're very lucky, you might apprentice your own child, send them off just like your parents did, and the cycle will start again. Because in the Middle Ages, suffering isn't just part of life, it is life. Chapter 4. The Medieval School of Hard Knocks. The rooster hasn't crowed yet, but your day is already overbooked. You're 8 years old, or close enough. No one really knows your exact birthday. Age is more of a vibe than a number here. Your legs are still sore from yesterday's chores. Your belly growls like a demon from the woods, and your eyes sting from too little sleep. But today you won't be spending the entire day in the fields or scrubbing wool in icy water. No, today you're going to school. Don't get too excited. This isn't the kind of school where you sit at desks and raise your hand to ask questions. There's no colorful chalkboard or songs about the alphabet. If you're lucky, and I mean lucky, your parents have scraped together enough coin to send you to a monastery school or a local parish instructor. If you're really lucky, the priest assigned to your village doesn't despise children, or believe that learning is best absorbed through the flat side of a stick. But let's not assume too much good fortune. You're a peasant child in a nameless English village in the 14th century. Books are rare, expensive, and chained to church lecterns. Paper, forget it. Most people don't even know how to spell their own name. Literacy is for the clergy, the nobility, or that one mysterious widow who talks to cats and might be a witch. And even if you do go to school, it's not to broaden your horizons, it's to make you more obedient to God and the local landowner. Let's begin. You arrive at a one-room building. If you're not being taught inside the priest's house or the cold echo of the church nave itself, there are no chairs, no desks. Just a few crude wooden benches and one miserable fireplace that hasn't worked properly since the last saint's day. Your classmates are other children like you, dirt-caked, underfed, wide-eyed and very aware that the last kid who asked too many questions got cuffed in the ear so hard he hasn't heard right since Lent. The priest, your teacher, stands at the front. He's tall, thin, and has that greyish pallor that suggests he's been subsisting on boiled cabbage and regret. He carries a book, but it's in Latin, and no one understands Latin, including probably him. Still, he chants it with conviction, as if the divine truth of heaven will leak into your tiny skull by osmosis. Class begins with prayers, always prayers, long ones, mumbled ones, the kind that loop back into themselves and make you wonder if you've entered some endless religious chant trap. You say them because not saying them risks sin, and sin means hell, and even at 8 years old, you've already been told that hell is a furnace filled with screaming heretics and boiling blood. Not unlike the public latrine, but worse. After prayers comes more Latin, or maybe a lesson on the 10 Commandments. If your teacher's feeling generous, you repeat the phrases by rote, your tongue tripping over words you've never seen written. Spelling isn't taught, writing is optional, and reading, that's for the ambitious or the cursed. Your quill is a feather, your ink is made of crushed oak galls and iron salts, and it stinks. If you're lucky enough to have a writing board, it's just a slab of wood or slate you scratch marks into with chalk or a knife. Mistakes aren't erased, they're scolded, then added to the ever-growing invisible ledger of your sins. If your hand cramps, tough. If you can't keep up, tougher. If you mispronounce a verse, that's a strike across the knuckles with a birch switch. That's just discipline. You learn not because you are nurtured, but because you fear the consequences of ignorance. And then there's the memorization. Endless, grinding memorization. You're expected to know your Pater Noster, your Ave Maria, and maybe, just maybe, a verse from Psalms. Not to understand them, heavens no, but to say them quickly, clearly, and without stuttering. Because the priest is watching, and his patience is about as long as the candle stub flickering on the altar. Now imagine doing all this on an empty stomach, in shoes made of scrap leather, with a head full of lice, and fingers so cold they feel like they'll snap off every time you try to write an A. And oh yes, the classroom smells. It always smells. Like old wood, wet wool, candle soot, and an unwashed humanity. The only warmth comes from the shared body heat of 20 children packed in like a choir of shivering sinners. But what if you're not in school? Well then, you're learning a different kind of lesson. One taught by the fields, the forge, or the spinning wheel. If you're a boy, you might be apprenticed. That sounds noble, doesn't it? An apprenticeship, like you're training to be a knight or a master craftsman. In reality, it means being shouted at by an overworked blacksmith who makes you stoke the forge and haul iron until your arms feel like they've been replaced with wet rope. Apprenticeship is education through exhaustion. No breaks, no pay. And if you make it through 7 years of servitude, you might become a journeyman. But you won't own a shop. You won't get rich. You'll just become slightly less miserable. If you're a girl, your education is domestic. And by domestic, we mean ceaseless. You learn to spin wool until your fingers bleed. You learn to sew, cook, clean, scrape hides, carry water, crush grain, brew ale, collect firewood, and smile politely while doing it. You're taught to obey, to serve, to prepare for the day you're married off, probably by 14, to a man twice your age, who smells like fermented onions and owns 2 pigs. Your homework is endurance. But not all is bleak. There are moments, tiny ones, that shimmer. A monk who secretly teaches you letters and helps you sound out Deus. A noble's daughter who gifts you a worn scroll of poetry. A traveling bard who sings about far-off places and leaves you dreaming for weeks. Those moments are rare, but they stay with you. They are the flickers of light in an otherwise shadowed childhood. Then the lesson bell tolls, and just like that, school is done. Not because you're finished learning, but because you need to get back to your real education work. You stumble out into the cold, your breath hanging in the air like ghost whispers, and you know tomorrow it'll all repeat. The prayers, the Latin, the ache. You may never write your name, you may never read a full sentence, but you will learn how to suffer, how to labor, and how to obey. That's the curriculum of medieval childhood. And class is always in session. Chapter 5. The doctor will not see you now. Sleep doesn't come easy. You're curled under your scratchy blanket, your stomach aching from a dinner that was mostly imagination, and something else gnawing at you, something deep, behind your ribs, under the skin. A cough, persistent, rattling. Or maybe it's the strange rash blooming on your arms like some cursed flower. You don't know what it is. But you do know one thing. You cannot afford to be sick in the Middle Ages. Because medicine, as we think of it, does not exist. What you have instead are remedies made of superstition, desperation, and whatever herbs the local wise woman hasn't run out of yet. Your local doctor, if your village even has one, is probably a barber. Yes, the man who cuts your hair might also be the one to lance a boil or amputate your foot. You wake in the night coughing, your throat raw and burning. Your mother wakes too, lights a stub of candle, and peers at you with concern. She doesn't call a physician. There are none. Even if there were, they wouldn't come. They don't serve people like you. Real physicians live in cities, behind high walls, serving bishops and lords. So your mother does what mothers have always done. She tries to help. She brews a foul-smelling tea, made from dried nettles and mouse-ear hawkweed. She mixes goose fat and ground onion into a salve, and rubs it on your chest. She whispers a prayer in Latin that neither of you understand. She ties a charm around your wrist, 3 knotted threads, and a sliver of bone, just in case it's the evil eye. None of it works. Your fever climbs, and the nights stretch long. In the darkness, you hear stories about neighbors who vanished after their skin turned black, about the widow down the lane who started coughing blood, and died 2 days later, her face twisted in horror. You pray you don't have the plague, but the truth is, plague is just one horror, among many. In medieval life, sickness is normal, not occasional, not rare, it's everywhere. Your water is contaminated, your food is spoiled, and your body is weakened from constant work and malnutrition. A scratch on your leg could turn into an infected ulcer. A cold could become pneumonia. A rotten tooth might kill you. You remember your brother. He was sick. One moment, he had a bellyache. The next, he was vomiting blood. By morning, he was gone, and no one was surprised. Child mortality is the rule, not the exception. Half of all children die before the age of 5. Smallpox, measles, dysentery, malaria, tuberculosis. Names you don't know, only the symptoms. Blood in the stool, a bloated belly, blisters that pop and scab, a high fever followed by silence. Sometimes it's not even disease that kills, it's the cure. Doctors, when they exist, are often worse than the illness. One might attach leeches to your chest to suck out your bad blood. Another will cut open your vein and drain a pint of your life into a wooden bowl. They believe illness comes from imbalanced humors, black bile, yellow bile, blood, and nobody agrees on what they do or how to fix them, but they're sure that's what's killing you. If you're wealthy, maybe you'll be given a poultice of saffron and unicorn horn powder. If you're poor, you get mustard seeds mashed in pig fat, or a prayer muttered over stale bread. And if none of that works, you die. Death in the Middle Ages is not rare. It is not hidden. It is not sanitized. It is loud, wet, public. When someone dies, there are no sterile hospital rooms, no clean sheets, no final words whispered to a nurse. You die in your bed, or in the street, or in the field, alone. Your family watches helplessly as you shake and gasp, and finally go still. Then they wrap you in cloth, maybe your own clothes, maybe someone else's, and dig a hole in the churchyard. If the ground isn't frozen, if it is, you wait, and the body waits too. If plague is suspected, your home may be boarded up, marked with a red cross. Food passed through a hole in the door. No one comes in. No one goes out. If you live, you're lucky. If you don't, you're forgotten. Sometimes bodies are tossed into pits, mass graves carved into the earth, layered with the dead, dusted with lime. No coffins, no names, just dirt and silence, and the smell. The living wear pomanders scented balls of herbs to keep the stench of rot at bay. You sleep with rosemary under your pillow, not for dreams, for protection. And still people whisper, maybe it's punishment, maybe it's sin, maybe God is angry. Because when medicine fails, religion takes its place. You see processions of flagellants, men whipping themselves bloody, begging for divine mercy. You see people wearing masks, shaped like bird beaks, stuffed with herbs, trying to filter death from the air. You hear sermons warning that your illness is proof of corruption, a mark of the devil, a test of your faith. No one mentions germs. Microscopes won't exist for centuries, and so you lie in the dark, feverish, afraid, wondering if you'll wake up tomorrow, wondering if waking up would even be better. Because in this world, pain is not a sign of something wrong, it's just the cost of being alive. And for the sick and poor, the bill always comes early. Chapter 6. The School of Hard Knocks. The rooster crows again, as if mocking your exhaustion. You haven't slept, your head aches, your limbs feel heavy, and your belly is still empty. But none of that matters, because you don't get a childhood in the Middle Ages. Not the kind where you play with toys, attend school in a warm classroom, or read bedtime stories by candlelight. Childhood, as a concept, barely exists. You're not a child, you're a small adult, expected to pull your weight as soon as your legs can carry you. At the age of 6, you're already working. Not helping, working. If you're lucky, you might be a peasant, born to a family that tills the land for a lord. That means you rise with the sun and work until it sets, alongside your parents, your siblings, and anyone else strong enough to lift a hoe. You weed the fields, carry water, feed animals, collect firewood, and dig, always digging. In summer, it's blistering. In winter, the cold slices through your skin. Your hands crack and bleed, and you keep going, because to stop is to fall behind, and falling behind means hunger. Hunger means death. Your back aches. Your feet are bare. There are no shoes for someone who hasn't stopped growing. No gloves, either. The soil is hard. Your nails are black, and your fingers are raw. You don't complain. No one does. There's nothing strange about children breaking under work. They're meant to, and yet you are among the lucky, because you are not in the city. In towns and villages, children like you work in workshops and crowded tenements. You're apprenticed to a blacksmith, a cobbler, a weaver, if you're fortunate. Otherwise, you're sweeping tavern floors, emptying chamber pots, or running errands for pennies. In worst cases, you work in the mines, pitch-black tunnels, choked with dust and danger. You crawl on hands and knees, dragging baskets of coal or salt behind you. You can't stand, you can't breathe. The walls groan, whispering threats. And when the tunnel collapses, as it often does, you vanish beneath the weight of a world that never cared for you. There is no schooling for children like you. Books are rare, expensive. Most people will never touch one, let alone read one. Paper is a luxury, and ink even more so. Parchment is made from animal skin. You don't waste it on teaching a farmer's son how to write his name. If you're a boy and your family has coin or connections, maybe you'll be sent to a monastery or cathedral school. There you'll learn Latin, scripture, and the art of copying text for God. You'll memorize your prayers, sing chants in the cold dawn, and live under silence and discipline. A slap on the hand is a common teaching tool. A rod across your back is an even more effective one. If you're a girl, you stay home. At best, you might be taught to spin thread or mend clothes. Most of your lessons are practical. Keep the fire going, knead the dough, clean the blood from the butchered chickens. You learn that obedience is holy, that silence is virtue, and that curiosity is dangerous. Your mother teaches you how to avoid shame, how to look down, how to hide pain, how to be invisible in a world that sees you as either property or temptation. And for many, education comes only from fear. You learn from watching your neighbor lose a hand for stealing a loaf of bread, watching a heretic dragged through the village square, and watching a girl disappear after being accused of consorting with spirits. The world teaches its lessons through spectacle, the public stocks, the whipping post, the gallows. Every execution is a classroom, every punishment a sermon. You learn to stay quiet, to keep your head down, to follow the rules, even if you don't know what they are, and yet some still dream. You hear stories, whispers of people who rose above their station. A peasant boy who learned Latin and became a scribe. A poor girl taken in by a nun who taught her to read the Psalms. They are fairy tales, really, but in the dark corners of your mind, you wonder, could it be you? Then the whip cracks outside, a child screams, and you remember where you are. The Middle Ages are not interested in your dreams. They care only for your usefulness. So you rise again, sore, silent, skin cracked from cold and work. You gather your tools. You begin the day. There is no classroom for you, only a world, full of hard lessons, and each one leaves a scar. Chapter 7, Suffer the Children, God, Guilt, and the Everlasting Fire. The church bell tolls again, not for mass this time, but for memory, because in the 14th century, even your soul isn't safe, and by now you've learned the most terrible truth of all. You were born wrong, not because you've done anything, not because you stole or lied or sinned with intent. Your crime is much older than you, much older than your parents. It happened long ago, in a mythical garden with a snake, an apple, and two naked ancestors, whose choices sealed your fate. Original sin. You've heard the words 1,000 times, though you don't fully understand. All you know is this: you are dirty on the inside, tainted before your first breath, and if you're not careful, if you're not good, obedient, pure, you will burn forever. And that's not a metaphor. Hell is real. Fire, sulfur, demons, pitchforks, scream. You've seen it painted on the chapel walls, in vivid, brutal detail. Skinned souls writhing in flame, devils with hooks and pincers, naked sinners being stuffed into boiling cauldrons while angels turn away in sorrow. You stare at these images while clutching your crust of bread, your stomach growling, and your knees aching from kneeling too long, and something in you believes it, completely. There are no bedtime stories in your world. There are bedtime threats. Be good or the devil will take you. Speak back and you'll be punished here or after death. Disobey, and your soul will rot in the black pit of eternal pain, and you believe it, every word, because belief is not a choice here, it is survival. You are baptized within days of birth, not for celebration, but as a precaution. The church teaches that if you die unbaptized, your soul floats in a state of eternal separation from God. Not hell exactly, but not heaven either. Limbo, a cold, empty echo of salvation. Even infants aren't exempt, and children die all the time. So your baptism happens quickly, often in freezing water, with a priest's muttered Latin, and a mother's whispered prayers, not for joy, but for fear. And once you're old enough to understand speech, you're already absorbing the rhythm of ritual, daily prayers, crossing yourself before me, watching grown men crawl on their knees to the altar in repentance. The church is the heart of your town, your village, your life. Its bell rules your time, its priest rules your conscience, its doctrine defines your worth. You are told that suffering is holy, that pain brings you closer to Christ, that obedience is blessed, that children must be molded like clay, beaten if necessary, so they don't grow crooked. Spare the rod, spoil the child. It's not just a proverb, it's policy. The priest warns parents to discipline quickly and harshly. Better a bruised body than a damned soul, so a slap across the face is not abuse, it is love. A whipping with a birch branch is mercy. A locked cellar for lying is compassion, because what is momentary pain compared to eternal fire? You learn early that God is always watching, that angels record your thoughts, that demons wait beside your bed. You must confess every sin, even the ones you don't understand. You kneel before a wooden screen, whispering your secrets to a figure robed in shadow. He listens, sometimes nods. He asks questions you don't know how to answer. Did you disobey your father? Did you think impure thoughts? Did you touch yourself? You're 10 years old. You're not even sure what that means, but you lie anyway, because silence might be worse. You say yes, you repent, you cry, and then he gives you penance. Say this prayer 30 times. Kneel in the chapel after sundown. Ask forgiveness. You leave with red cheeks, shaking hands, and a terrible sticky sense that you're never quite clean. Religion is not comfort. It is correction. It is the harsh holy hand of discipline. It's the village priest, the village mother, and the whispering townsfolk, all watching your soul like jailers. Because in the Middle Ages, theology is not theory, it is law, it is survival, and it's not about love, it's about fear. Fear of sin, fear of death, fear of punishment. Because you see it constantly, you see it in public, in flesh and bone. You gather in the square to watch justice, but it's really a lesson. A thief has been caught, a man who stole bread from a monastery kitchen. You think of your own hunger, but you're not supposed to feel pity. You're supposed to feel gratitude that it wasn't you. So you watch, the crowd jeers, the priest prays, the man's hands are chopped off with a dull axe, blood sprays onto straw, he screams until he faints. You look away, but someone grabs your chin and forces you to see. You must see, because this is the cost of sin, the cost of disobedience. You don't make that mistake, and neither does your soul. But salvation is not free. It must be earned, bought, suffered for, and children are expected to begin young. By 7, you're memorizing prayers, reciting creeds, attending mass, several times a week. You kneel on stone floors for hours. You fast on holy days. You deny yourself pleasures, small as they are, and Lent, 40 days of penance. No meat, no joy, no indulgence, just reflection, sacrifice, and the constant, gnawing question, am I good enough? No one says yes, because guilt is encouraged. Guilt is piety. Guilt keeps you humble, obedient, faithful. You flagellate, yes, sometimes literally. Self-whipping is common among monks, and you see them sometimes, walking the streets in silent processions, bleeding backs exposed, chanting as they go. They believe that pain purifies, and some parents make their children follow the example. You are handed a knotted rope, and told to hit your own back, gently at first, then harder. Your tears are part of the ritual, your cries are prayers. It's not all torment. Occasionally the church offers sweetness, a warm candlelight vigil, a feast day with sweet bread and song, a saint's tale of miracles and divine justice. You cling to these scraps of joy,
but even they come wrapped in fear. Every saint was tortured, every martyr burned, every miracle came after agony. You begin to understand that suffering is not just expected, it is proof of devotion. If you are in pain, maybe God is watching, and you want him to watch, because the alternative is unthinkable. What if he turns away? What if you die and find nothing? No light, no embrace, just darkness and cold and silence. What if you're not worth saving? That fear hangs over every day of your life. It wakes you up, it follows you through the fields, it crawls into your bed at night. You dream of fire, of shadows, of hands pulling you downward. You wake up crying, and no one comforts you, because the fear is the point. It keeps you in line, it keeps you alive. But one day you ask a question. You ask why the baby died even though she was baptized. You ask why the miller's boy, who was always kind, was struck by lightning. You ask why God lets the good ones suffer, and you're told not to ask, because to question is to doubt, and doubt is a sin. You tuck your questions away deep inside like forbidden treasures. You learn not to speak them, not to think them too loudly, because thoughts too can betray you. The devil is clever, the priest says. He whispers in your mind. He mimics your own voice. He plants thoughts like weeds. He wants you to stray, to doubt, to disbelieve. And once you do, your soul is his. So you monitor yourself. You confess thoughts that aren't crimes. You apologize for feelings you can't control. You learn to hate yourself for the sin of being human. And the church tells you this is good. Humility is holy. It means you know your place. Your place is beneath God, beneath the priest, beneath the adults who punish you. You are taught that obedience is not just for parents. It is for kings, lords, clergy, and heaven itself. If a priest tells you to fast, you fast. If he tells you to bleed, you bleed. If he tells you that your body is evil, you believe him. And eventually you start to believe it all, because belief isn't something you choose, it's something you become. It shapes you from the inside out. It wraps itself around your mind like ivy, growing through every crack, every doubt, until even your dreams are sermons. You dream of judgment, of angels with flaming swords, of God's throne towering and terrible, with your sins unrolled on a scroll a mile long. You tremble, you cry, and you wake up praying. You don't know any other way to live. You never will, because in the Middle Ages, faith isn't a path, it's a prison, and childhood is where the cell is built, bar by bar, prayer by prayer, tear by tear.
Chapter 8. The Devil's Whispers. Medieval Fears and Superstitions. The night deepens, and with it, the fear. Not of bandits or wolves or rival lords. Those are daytime threats, at least ones you can see. No, the truest terrors of the medieval world come when the sun sets and the candles burn low. You are a child in the 14th century, and the world around you is not just dangerous, it is haunted. Every shadow hides a demon, every strange illness, a curse. Every misstep, the work of witches or worse. There is no comfort in logic here. The medieval world doesn't run on science or reason. It runs on faith, fear, and folklore, and as a child you absorb it all. There are no cartoons, no storybooks filled with smiling animals. Your bedtime stories are about evil spirits that steal your soul in the dark. Saints, who bled from every pore, and children just like you, who disobeyed their parents and were carried off by the devil. You're not alone in your beliefs. Your parents, your priest, even the village elders, you trust them, and they all agree. The world is teeming with invisible dangers. They tell you the devil walks among men, shape-shifting into cats, or crows, or even kindly neighbors. He whispers in the ears of midwives and old women. He tempts the weak-hearted, and he is always watching. Your first lesson in fear came early. Maybe you were just 5 or 6 when your grandmother pointed to a crooked tree in the woods and said, "That's where the changelings dance at night." You didn't know what a changeling was then, but her eyes went dark, and her voice dropped low. "If you ever see a baby alone in the woods," she said, "don't touch it. It might look human, but it isn't. The fair folk leave them behind when they steal real children." You stared at the shadows beyond the tree line after that. Every rustling bush became a potential trap. You learned to look over your shoulder, especially at dusk, and so, you grow up afraid of the night, and with good reason. People disappear, they go into the forest and never return, and if they come back, they're different, quiet, distant, touched. Your mother whispered. Maybe they looked a fae in the eyes, Maybe they heard the devil's voice on the wind. The church reinforces these fears with its own stories. Hell is not abstract here. It's vivid. It's physical. It's painted on the walls of your local chapel in bloody reds and smoky black. You've seen it. Demons roasting sinners on spits, stabbing them with pitchforks, dragging them into pits of fire. The priest doesn't sugarcoat it for children. If anything, he warns you more severely. Children are impure, he says, prone to lies and sin. If you steal bread or backtalk your father, you risk eternal torment. You start seeing sin everywhere, in yourself, in your friends. You watch a girl pick flowers from the churchyard, and you wonder if she'll be punished. You hear a boy use God's name in vain and take a half step back, just in case lightning strikes. This isn't just fear, it's survival. If God is watching, then the devil is too. But not all dangers are cosmic. Some are right here in the village, hiding behind familiar faces. That old woman who lives alone at the edge of town, the one who never had children, and keeps cats. People say she's a witch. They say she can curse your crops with just a glance, or make your baby sick with a whispered word. When a cow dies or a child gets a fever, the whispers, she's the first name they say, and sometimes the last. And when fear turns to action, it's swift and brutal. You've heard the screams, you've seen the fires, maybe you even threw a stone because everyone else did, and it felt like survival. Afterward, no one talks about it. They just say the evil is gone, and the fields will grow again. But deep down, you're not sure, because the wind still howls at night, because the shadows still move, and because sometimes you wake up and swear there's something standing at the foot of your bed. Even the animals aren't safe from suspicion. A black dog crossing your path is a sign of death. A raven on your roof is a messenger of ill fortune. A cow that stops giving milk might be hexed. You learn the signs early. You learn to spit over your shoulder, to knock on wood, to avoid whistling at night. You learn that rituals matter, that magic is real and dangerous. The adults speak of charms and wards in hushed tones. Your mother sews tiny crosses into your clothes. Your father buries iron nails at the four corners of the home. Salt is sprinkled in doorways. Holy water is kept in a cup by the bed. No one questions why. These are not superstitions, they're protections. And then there are the nightmares are common, but here they are more than just dreams. They are omens. If you dream of blood, someone might die. If you dream of flying, the devil may be tempting you to leave your body and fly with him. Sleep itself is a vulnerable state, a time when your soul can wander. That's why your parents make the sign of the cross over you before bed. That's why you pray, not just for blessings, but for safety. Illness is another kind of fear, wrapped in mystery and myth. You don't know about bacteria or viruses, no one does. So when the sweating sickness comes, or a child gets the pox, explanations are simple and terrifying. It's a punishment, a curse. Perhaps someone broke a taboo. Perhaps a sin was committed in secret. Perhaps the devil came collect. Even doctors, or what passes for them, believe in humors and curses and stars. A bad alignment of Mars might cause madness. An excess of black bile might breed melancholy. Bloodletting is prescribed to rebalance your humors. Leeches are applied. Poultices of ash and dung are spread on open wounds. And when nothing works, they blame the unseen witches, demons, impure thoughts. You learn to pray more, to avoid stepping on graves, to never walk home alone at night. You clutch your wooden cross when your stomach hurts. You repeat holy words when your baby brother coughs in the dark. And yet fear is not all there is. In this world of shadows you also find meaning. Every ritual, every charm, every whispered prayer gives you a sense of control. You are small, yes, vulnerable, but not powerless. You know how to avoid cursed places. You know the right saint to pray to for toothaches. You know that the devil can't enter if your door is marked with blessed chalk. There's comfort in belief, even if that belief is born of terror. The seasons shape your fears too. Winter is harsh and hungry, but it's also when spirits are closest. You're told the veil between worlds is thinner then. The dead might visit, candles are lit, offerings are left on doorsteps. You whisper to your ancestors and hope they whisper back kindly. During harvest you avoid the woods at dusk. That's when the wild hunt rides, the ghostly procession of souls galloping through the sky, chasing sinners and snatching up strays. You never look up when the wind picks up. You never whistle when alone. You don't want them to see you. Even church festivals are tinged with fear. At Easter you watch passion plays where devils drag actors playing sinners into mock hellfire. You laugh, but it stays with you.
At All Hallows Eve you light lanterns not just for fun, but to keep spirits at. Your world is saturated with invisible laws and sacred protections. Step out of line, and the consequences are cosmic, and yet even in this fearful place, you find awe. The sound of the church bell at night makes your spine tingle. The smell of incense during Mass feels like magic. The stories of saints performing miracles, healing the sick, surviving fire, those give you hope. Hope that not everything is suffering, that not all shadows are full of teeth, that maybe, just maybe, someone is watching over you. And so, as you lie in bed beneath your itchy blanket, the fire flickering low, and the wind groaning through the cracks, you do not sleep easily, but you do sleep. Your last thoughts are a prayer, hurried and imperfect, a whispered bargain with the divine. Because in the Middle Ages, childhood is not innocent, it is not protected, it is steeped in fear, but it is also steeped in belief. And in a world this uncertain, belief is the strongest armor you'll ever have.
Chapter 9. Play, Pain, and Punishment. A medieval childhood's daily dose of joy and misery. It's midday now. The sun hangs heavy above the village, though no one seems to notice it as a symbol of leisure or freedom. For the medieval child, the concept of playtime does not exist the way modern minds imagine it. There are no plastic toys, no playgrounds, no screens, and certainly no adult supervision with juice boxes and sunscreen. Joy, if it comes, arrives in short bursts, tangled between moments of labor, obedience, and consequence. You, a child of 7 summers, though no one's keeping track because birthdays aren't a thing, might be allowed a stolen moment to play. But even that comes wrapped in danger. There are no padded parks or grassy backyards. Instead, there's the mud-soaked lane behind the pigsty, or a hollow stump beside the oxen's watering trough. There, you and the other children of the village gather to chase each other with sticks, throw stones at nothing in particular, or attempt to carve something vaguely animal-shaped from a scrap of firewood with a dangerously blunt knife. If you're a peasant child, your toys are whatever you can find. A bundled rag becomes a doll, a bent twig becomes a knight's sword, a rock with a face scratched into it is your only companion, and you'd better not lose it, because no one's making you another. You learn quickly how to play quietly, how to laugh without drawing too much attention, and how to stop instantly the moment your name is shouted by a parent or elder, which could mean you're needed, or you're in trouble. And let's talk about trouble. Medieval discipline is brutal, not just physical, but psychological, spiritual, and permanent. The medieval world believes children are born into sin, not innocence. Sin, a tiny, corrupt, unruly creature, who must be molded by force if necessary into obedience. There are no parenting blogs, no gentle approaches, no timeouts. Instead, the stick, the belt, or the hand is the voice of correction. Did you spill the pottage? Lie to your mother. Miss Mass. Stare too long at the Lord's daughter with your mud-caked face. Then come closer. It's time for your lesson. Punishment might mean a beating with a switch or wooden rod, handed out without hesitation. No one objects. In fact, neighbors might watch and nod in approval. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Those words are practically sacred, and don't think you can cry your way out of it. Tears are expected, so is silence. If you scream too loud, you'll be told to hush, lest the neighbors think your parents aren't firm enough. Now imagine a worse fate, one reserved, not for the careless but for the defiant. Stop. Yes, children, sometimes as young as 6, could be placed in wooden stocks in the center of town, not for play, but for punishment. Hands and head locked into position, legs cramping, while townspeople walk past, and occasionally hurl insults, or worse, a rotten turnip, a frozen clod of manure. Laughter, shame. Schools exist, sure, but not for you. You're a peasant. Education is a distant, dusty thing that lives inside the cloistered abbey walls. Maybe the local priest takes pity and tries to teach you your letters on a good day, but most likely, you'll grow up not knowing how to read your own name, assuming your parents gave you one more elaborate than boy or mouse. But let's say, just for a moment, you live in the manor house. You're the child of a minor noble. Surely your days are filled with songbirds and sunshine, right? Not quite. Your version of play might include falconry practice. Not because it's fun, but because your father expects you to one day command a household. You are taught manners from the moment you can walk. How to bow, how to speak, how to wait in silence. Get it wrong, and your tutor won't be kind. The rod is for you too. And if you're a girl, your games involve sewing, serving, and walking with books on your head to learn posture. Your childhood is rehearsal for marriage, for alliance, for a property. There is little room for make-believe in a world that believes in demons. Yes, demons. The medieval world is soaked in superstition. Every bump in the night, every strange twitch or unexplained sickness, is evidence of devils at play. If you suffer from seizures, or you talk to yourself, or even just seem too clever for your own good, the village might whisper that you are cursed, possessed, touched by something unholy. And if you're a child, that doesn't protect you. In fact, it makes it worse. You might be subjected to an exorcism, a terrifying ordeal, where a priest shouts holy words, tosses holy water, and demands the devil inside you depart. Your parents, desperate and afraid, will stand by and pray. All you know is that it hurts, that it's that you're the cause of some great shame, and if the ritual fails, you're locked away, tied to your bed, or worse, given over to a monastery, where silence and solitude are your new cradle. You begin to understand, very early, that suffering is not the exception, it's the rule. You suffer in silence, like your parents, like their parents, like every hunched and haggard adult you know. No one asks what makes you happy. No one asks how you feel, because feelings are not currency here. Work is, obedience is, survival. Even when you aren't being punished, play can turn dangerous. Climbing a tree, one slip, and your broken arm becomes a death sentence. No hospitals, no splints, no antibiotics, just pain, and a poultice, and hope. A simple infection from a scraped knee might fester into a life-threatening wound. Tetanus, sepsis, fever, dreams that never end. And yet there are moments, slivers of light, sometimes when the adults are too tired to shout, and the fields are quiet for just a while. You and your fellow children run, just through the lanes, through the grass, barefoot, and screaming with delight. You chase shadows, laugh at nothing, and hide in a haystack. You feel for the briefest of moments free. In winter you might slide down an icy hill on a wooden plank. In summer, catch frogs near the stream, and name them after saints you've only ever heard of in mass. You craft tiny cloaks for mice, or whisper secrets into the hollow of an old oak tree. These are your treasures, these are your gains. And when you lay down to sleep again that night, body aching, stomach rumbling, skin still smarting from a careless slap, you remember the frog, the tree, the moment when you forgot the world, even just for a heartbeat, because you are a child, born to suffer, but still capable of joy, even in a world determined to forget what joy looks like. This is your playtime, this is your punishment, this is your medieval childhood. Chapter 10. A fever without mercy. Sickness, superstition, and the shrinking world of a medieval child. It begins with a cough, soft, dry, and ordinary at first, just a small nuisance in the endless din of daily discomforts. But in the Middle Ages, even a cough could carry a shadow. You don't have the luxury of brushing it off. Because here, sickness doesn't come wrapped in tissues and chicken soup. It comes with dread, and once it finds you, it rarely lets go. You're 10 years old, maybe. No one knows for sure, not even your parents. Birthdays aren't really celebrated. When your birth certificate is a priest's best guess, scribbled on a scrap of parchment. But one thing is certain, you're a child. And children, in this world, are as vulnerable as candle flames in the wind. You lie on the straw-stuffed sack that counts as your bed, face flushed, eyes sticky, head pounding like a blacksmith's anvil. The thin wool blanket scratches your skin, and the hay pokes through the cloth like thorns. Your mother is crouched beside you, holding a wet rag to your forehead. It's barely cool, and the water smells faintly of sheep and something sour. The fever's rising, you've stopped sweating, your lips are dry and cracked, you're not getting better. And everyone knows what that means. You've seen it happen before. That other boy, Tomaz, from 2 huts down. One day he was running with the village pigs, laughing and muddy, and 2 days later he was pale, still, eyes staring up at the thatch. They buried him in a hurry. No priest, no prayers, just a hole, some earth, and a mother's quiet scream. Now it's your turn. The village healer is summoned, not a doctor. There are no doctors in your world, not for people like you. The learned physicians of the great cities, the ones who write in Latin, and diagnose with star charts are for the wealthy and noble. They live miles away in stone buildings behind library doors. You live in mud. So instead, the healer comes, wrapped in shawls, her hands cracked from years of toil. She smells of dried herbs and damp wool. She doesn't take your temperature. She listens to your breathing, holds your wrist for a long moment, then peers at your tongue, muttering under her breath. Then she begins. Out comes a leather pouch of dried nettles, crushed bark, and bitter roots. She boils them in a pot over the hearth, pouring the mixture into a wooden spoon. The taste is foul, earthy and sharp, like mud soaked in vinegar. You gag. She forces another spoonful past your lips. Next comes the charms. A sprig of rue is tied with string and placed under your pillow to ward off evil spirits. A carved saint's medallion, one of the few bits of silver your family owns, is laid on your chest. Your mother kneels to pray, fingers trembling over her rosary, but her eyes keep glancing at you, and her lips move faster than the beads. The room fills with smoke as juniper and sage are burned to cleanse the air. It stings your eyes and clogs your throat. You cough again, wet this time. Something rattles in your chest. The healer frowns, but says nothing. Outside, the neighbors whisper. Some think you're cursed. Others say your family offended the spirits. One old man swears he saw a black cat slink past your door last night, a sure omen of death. Another blames the humors. Cold and moist, he says. Your phlegm is out of balance, but none of it matters. The truth is this. Medicine is guesswork, and illness is a lottery. And children are always on the losing end. You fade in and out of consciousness as the fever rises. Dreams blend with wake. You see the Virgin Mary one moment, and the village pig licking your face the next. Your father comes in from the fields, his hands covered in soil. He doesn't speak, just stands at the edge of the room, watching. His jaw is tight, his eyes are... Men don't cry here, but they do pray with clenched fists. Then something changes. The fever breaks. It happens suddenly, like a wind dying. Your skin cools, the fire inside you ebbs. You wake in the grey dawn, soaked in sweat, your throat raw, your body limp as wet linen, but alive. Your mother gasps. The healer nods. A miracle, they say. God has spared you. Or maybe it was the herbs, or the charm, or the cat left. No one knows. No one ever knows. But you're alive, and that is enough. For now, you will recover slowly. The cough will linger. Your strength will take weeks to return. But this brush with death will not be your last. In medieval childhood, every illness is a threat. There are no vaccines, no antibiotics, no emergency rooms. A scratch can become sepsis, a toothache, a death sentence. Worse still are the plagues. When pestilence comes, it doesn't knock gently. It kicks in the door. In the great towns, bodies stack like firewood. The plague carts rumble down the muddy streets, and the bell of death tolls endlessly. In your village, when the rumors come, fleas, rats, black boils, the people scatter or seal their doors. Fear hangs in the air like smoke. You remember the stories. In one nearby hamlet, everyone died. Everyone. Even the priest. Even the pigs. Whole villages vanish like breath on glass. You've never seen the sea or a forest far from your fields. But you've seen that. When the illness passes, if it passes, it leaves silence. Children don't return to the games they once played. Some of their playmates are gone. The laughter doesn't come back quickly. It's cautious, like the sun peeking through the clouds after a long storm. But there's another side to sickness, one rarely spoken of, the mercy of it. Because in a life of pain, hunger and labor, sometimes death is not the worst outcome. You've seen children so thin they vanish into their own shadows. You've seen little ones fall into the river and never come up. You've seen what happens to the children sold to monasteries, or worse, to strangers. Suffering is a constant. Death in a terrible way is a kind of relief. You survived this time, but the shadow of sickness follows you like a second skin. Every cough, every shiver, every rash could be the start of something. You grow up with death as a companion, a familiar, not feared, just expected.
So you learn to live with it. You learn to treasure the brief moments when you're not hurting. The warmth of a hearth, the laughter of a sibling, the first berry of summer. Small joys, tiny mercy. And maybe that's why medieval children smile so rarely. Not because they're joyless, but because they've learned not to waste a smile on moments that don't deserve it. But when they do smile, when you smile, it is like a sunrise that dared to break through centuries of storm. And that, somehow, is the greatest miracle of all. Chapter 11. Bound in silence. The medieval child, and the brutality of discipline. In the medieval world, discipline is not a conversation. It's not a timeout, a gentle lecture or a teachable moment. It is swift. It is brutal. And for a child, it is inescapable. The day begins with the rooster's cry. But for you, the alarm isn't birdsong, it's the sting in your legs. From yesterday's switch, you shift in the bed of straw and feel the welt where the rod struck. It pulses like a bruise beneath your skin. You remember why. You dropped the bucket at the well. It spilled the last of the morning water. It wasn't even full. But that didn't matter. In your father's world, mistakes have consequences, and in your mother's world, the pain of those consequences is a godly duty. To spare the rod is to spoil the child. They say, and that rod, be it birch, hazel, or the edge of a wooden spoon, is ever within reach. There are no child rights councils, no laws to protect the tender growing minds of youth. You are a possession, not a person. Not yet. You are shaped like wet clay by fear, faith and punishment. And so you rise early, your muscles aching, and you carry out your chores with silence thick in your throat. You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not eat until told. You do not question. That kind of voice, curious, bold, is beaten out early, like the wrinkles in your father's linen shirt. Your education, if you receive one, may begin at the monastery, but even the cloisters are not gentle places. At the village school, if your parents are lucky or pious enough to secure your place, learning begins not with wonder, but with rules. You are shown the letters of the Latin alphabet, carved into wax tablets. They are sacred, holy things. To miswrite them, to smudge them, is a crime. The teacher, most likely a monk or a parish clerk, doesn't raise his voice. He raises the cane. A whisper earns a strike. Slouching, another. Your knuckles are red within hours. Your back straightens from pain. Not posture, but you learn. You learn fast. Or you don't return. The punishments are not random. They are deliberate, sanctified. To beat a child is to save his soul. That's what they say. The body is wicked, full of sin from birth. Only pain can burn it clean. So you take the lash with tears in your eyes, and you whisper the psalms through cracked lips. You learn that shame is a tool as much as the rod. At home, if you break a cup, you're made to kneel for hours on cold stone. If you steal a crust of bread, your hands are bound, or you're locked outside in the winter air. You may be mocked, laughed at, paraded before neighbors. Sometimes you're even forced to wear signs, wooden boards slung around your neck that read liar or glutton. You are taught to fear, and you are taught that this fear is love. But not all punishments come from parents or priests. Sometimes children punish each other. Boys scuffle in the fields, not out of play, but dominance. The bigger boys strike the smaller. The weakest are left behind. If you cry, you're taunted. If you run, you're hunted. There is no safe space, no refuge from the hierarchy of cruelty. Girls are not spared either. They are burdened early with responsibility, and any hint of laziness or resistance is met with harsh words or worse, especially from their own mothers. And yet beneath this harshness, there is order. It's not justice, not in the way we know it, but it is structure. In a world where chaos is only ever a bad harvest away, discipline is a lifeline. Without it, the household collapses. A mistake with the livestock could mean starvation. A forgotten chore could rot the grain. Parents are not monsters. They are desperate, and discipline is the only power they possess to keep death away for one more season. Still, there are moments rare, flickering, when the mask slips. After the punishment, Your mother weeps beside the fire. She wipes the tears from your cheeks. And her own. She gives you an extra scrap of bread when your father isn't looking. She braids your hair gently the next morning and whispers, "Be good, my heart." You nod. You always nod. At church, the priest gives sermons on hellfire and obedience. You sit on a cold bench, legs swinging, bottom sore from the morning's slap. He talks of children who disobeyed and were swallowed by the earth. You believe him. You must. The world is cruel. Yes. But that cruelty has a rhythm, a reason. In time, you learn to self-police, to speak carefully, to step softly, to bow your head. You punish yourself before others can. You learn that silence is safer than honesty, that obedience is the only way to survive. There are no gentle talks in your childhood. No one kneels to meet your eye level. No one asks how you feel.
Your feelings are not yours. They are weeds to be cut down before they choke the harvest. And so you become what they want, a quiet shape, a shadow of duty. But inside something small fights back. You begin to whisper to the birds, tell secrets to the wind. You imagine a world where questions are not punished. You dream, oh how you dream, of warmth without condition, of a touch that does not sting, of love that doesn't hurt. And sometimes on the rarest days, it almost feels real, like when your grandmother tells you a story by the hearth, her voice cracked but kind, or when a neighbor lets you pet the lamb without scolding, or when you watch the sun rise over the frost fields, and for a moment, the pain in your body fades, and all that remains is light. But dreams are dangerous too. A child who questions too loudly may be called a devil. A girl with too much spirit might be beaten for pride. And if your punishments don't work, if you rebel, resist, refuse, you may be sent away, to a monastery, to an apprenticeship, to the street. Discipline isn't about the act. It's about the memory, about shaping a soul that will not stray. And so the beatings continue. The shame is passed down like an heirloom, from parent to child, across generations like a cold inheritance. In this world, a child does not own their body. It is a thing to be molded, corrected, preserved for the tasks of adulthood. And the bruises are simply part of the process. There is no rebellion, only obedience or suffering, or silence. But sometimes in your heart, you whisper the forbidden word. Why? Why must love feel like this? Why must childhood hurt? Why must pain be proof of goodness? You never say it aloud. Not yet. But someday, when you are grown, when your own child stands before you with fear in their eyes, perhaps you will remember that word. And perhaps you will choose something different, something kinder, something human. Chapter 12. The Dread of Disease. The world is a dangerous place when you're a child in the Middle Ages, not just because the streets are filled with filth, or the future is a fragile thing, but because death is a constant companion, always lurking, just beyond the corner, waiting for the right moment to strike. And more often than not, that moment comes in the form of disease. You've heard the whispers, the hushed conversations behind closed doors, the frightened murmurs of the village elders. There's a sickness in the air. It comes and goes like a shadow, and there's no way to predict when it'll reach. It's a strange thing to live with the constant knowledge that any cough or fever could be the beginning of the end. But that's life when you're growing up in the 1300s. Death is no longer a distant concept reserved for the old, the sick, or the poor. It's an everyday companion, a shadow that walks with you wherever you go. It's a cool morning, and the world outside is damp with dew. The smell of wet earth fills your nose as you shuffle out of bed, your body already aching from yesterday's labor. The cold is biting, making every movement feel like it takes twice as much effort as it should. But you've gotten used to this. The cold, the discomfort, the tightness in your chest from the damp air. It's all part of life in this medieval world, a world where sickness runs rampant, like an invisible force you can never escape. As you move around the hut, the stench of your home is overwhelming. It's a combination of damp straw, unwashed bodies, and the ever-present smell of animal waste. You don't notice it as much anymore,
having lived with it for so long. But that doesn't make it any less suffocating. Your mother, her face gaunt and pale, is sitting by the fire, stirring a pot of something that might pass for food. You can see the worry etched into her face, her hands shaking slightly as she works. Your father, ever the stoic figure, is standing by the door, looking out into the foggy morning. He's been ill for the past few days. Nothing serious, just a fever and a persistent cough. But the longer the illness lasts, the more nervous you become. You've seen it before, how a simple fever can turn into something far worse. How 1 minute someone is sitting by the fire talking to you, and the next they're too weak to move, their skin turning grey, their breath shallow. You've heard the stories of the plague, the great mortality that swept across Europe like wildfire, killing millions in its wake. You've seen the empty homes, the abandoned villages, the people who left their homes in search of safety, only to find death waiting for them. You don't know anyone who hasn't been touched by it in some way. Maybe it's a family member, a neighbor, a friend, or maybe it's just the fear, the constant, unshakable fear, that the plague is just waiting for the right moment to strike. There's no warning, no way to know when it will come for you. The symptoms are the same. First, a fever, followed by aches and pains, then the coughing, the shortness of breath, the nausea, and before you know it you're too weak to stand, too weak to even call for help. Your body is shutting down, one system at a time, as the disease ravages your insides, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop it. No herbs, no prayers, no magic, just waiting. Waiting for death. You've seen it happen to others. You've watched children wither away, their tiny bodies racked with fever, their eyes hollow and distant as they slip into unconsciousness. You've watched your mother try to soothe them, to comfort them, but it's no use. The disease is too strong. The best you can do is watch as they die, one after another, like cattle being led to slaughter. You wonder, as you stand there, whether you will be next. Whether the cough that's been nagging at your throat for the past few days is just a minor illness, or the beginning of something worse. You try not to think about it. You try not to imagine the worst, but it's impossible not to. Your mother, sensing your unease, gives you a worried look. "Don't worry, child," she says softly, her voice raspy from her own illness. "It's just the change of the season. The air is thick with dampness, and the cold hasn't left as yet. You're stronger than that." But you know she doesn't believe it. She says it to reassure you, but you can see the fear in her eyes. She knows as well as you do that the illness doesn't care about strength. It comes for everyone, rich or poor, young or old, and once it has you, there's no escaping it. Your father's coughing fit interrupts the moment. It's deep and harsh, the kind that sends a shiver down your spine. He struggles to catch his breath, his body shaking violently with the force of it. Your mother rushes over to him, her hands trembling as she helps him sit down. You watch helpless, as she fusses over him, offering him water, trying to comfort him, but it's clear that the fever has taken hold. He's burning with heat, his skin slick with sweat. The worst part is how weak he looks. The strong stoic man who used to carry barrels of grain and dig ditches with ease is now a shadow of himself, a sickly version of the man you once admired. You're not sure how much longer you can pretend everything will be okay. The fear is growing inside you, gnawing at your insides. Your body is already tired from the work, and your mind is weary from the constant worry. The world outside is as dangerous as the one inside, and there's nowhere to escape. Your father's coughing fit subsides, and he leans back against the wall, his eyes closed in exhaustion. Your mother too is spent, her hands resting on her knees, as she catches her breath. You stand there, waiting for something to change. You don't know what you're waiting for. A miracle, a cure, something, anything, that will make this nightmare stop. But nothing happens, and as the day stretches on, you can't help but wonder what tomorrow will bring. Will your father survive? Will you wake up to another day of sickness and fear? Will it ever end? The air in the room grows thick with the smell of sweat, illness, and despair, and in that moment, you realize something that shakes you to your core. This is the reality of life. In the Middle Ages, death is always just around the corner, A shadow that waits for you to let your guard down. It's a constant, terrifying companion. And there's nothing you can do to escape it. The plague will come, and when it does, you'll be ready, or you won't. There's no way to know.
Chapter 13. Trial by Childhood. Medieval Discipline, Fear and Survival. The sun is a dull smear behind grey clouds, but its light still drips through the cracks in the wooden walls of your village hut, reminding you it's a new day. Not that it feels fresh. You're stiff from sleeping on straw, sore from yesterday's labor, and hungry. Always hungry. You're 10 years old, and in medieval Europe, that makes you neither child nor adult, but something awkwardly in between. You're old enough to help in the fields, carry firewood, watch the goats, spin wool, and receive beatings. Lots of beatings. The idea of childhood innocence is foreign here. Children aren't seen as vessels of potential, or little lights waiting to be nurtured. You're more like an apprentice adult, raw, clumsy, and in constant need of correction. Correction which unfortunately comes in one form only: pain. Your father doesn't believe in explanations. He believes in the stick, the kind that's propped beside the door, worn smooth from years of youth. The same one he once threatened to burn for being too soft. If you're lucky, the punishment comes quickly, a smack on the legs or back of the neck. If you're not, it's the belt, or worse, the switch. Pulled fresh from the hedgerow, flexible, whippy, and designed to leave trails of raised red lines across your skin, like a map to repentance. Discipline isn't just domestic, it's divine. The church says children are born sinful, stained by original sin, corrupted from the moment they draw breath. You're told your suffering purifies your soul. Pain isn't just punishment, it's medicine. The priest says the rod drives foolishness far from a child. The priest who never smiles. The priest who lectures children in Latin, a language none of you understand, but all of you fear. You nod along, eyes wide, not because you grasp the sermon but because you've seen what happens to the boy who nods off. School, if you attend one, is hardly a respite. There are no colorful posters, no playtime, no art class. There is, instead, the schoolmaster's whip, made of leather, soaked for weight, dried for sting. Writing lessons are done on wax tablets or slate, scratching letters into hard surfaces with cold fingers. Get one wrong, your knuckles bleed, your ears ring. Discipline is precise and immediate. Memorization isn't about understanding, it's survival. Chant, repeat, recite, mess it up, and face the consequences. You learn more from fear than from books. And then there are the other children. Your peers are not your playmates. They are your competitors for food, warmth, and approval. Childhood games are not padded or polite. They are rough and often violent. Stick battles turn into real fights. Wrestling turns into bloodied noses. If you show weakness, if you cry, if you limp, if you hesitate, you're marked not just by other children, but by adults who now suspect your character. Your little brother once dropped a bucket of goat's milk. It was an accident, a stumble on the slippery path outside. But milk is precious, and mistakes are not tolerated. That evening he was whipped with a rope, until he couldn't sit down. Your mother wept quietly, not because she disagreed with the punishment, but because now the family would go without butter until next week. But the worst discipline isn't always physical. Sometimes it's abandoned. You remember the day old John's son ran off. Just 10 summers old, vanished into the woods. They found him 2 days later, shivering, starved, eyes wild like a trapped animal. He'd stolen a turnip from the neighbor's field, so they tied him to a post in the village square. A sign hung around his neck: thief. People walked by and spit at him. One woman threw moldy bread. For a week, no one would speak to him. He returned to his family, but never really came back. Shaming is an art in the medieval village. Humiliation is a communal event. You are made an example. You're forced to wear animal masks, to crawl through the mud, to apologize in front of the congregation with trembling lips and swollen eyes. Forgiveness comes slowly, trust, never. And if you're an orphan or worse, a bastard, your discipline is not rooted in family or faith, but in law. You belong to no one. You're passed from house to house, beaten by strangers, blamed for broken things, worked harder than anyone else. If you cry, you're told to cry quietly. If you fall, you're told to get up, or be left behind. No one is coming to help you. No one is looking for you. 010520. There is one place you fear above all: the manorial court. When a child is brought before the Lord's reeve, it means something serious. Stealing bread, harming animals, lying about tithes, the punishment, stocks, flogging, or if you're older, branding, a hot iron pressed into skin, forever marking your crime. Once branded, you're a ghost in your own village. Even the other children won't look you in the eye. They fear they might be next. And yet, you accept all this, because you don't know anything else. You don't dream of a better life. You don't imagine toys or treats or gentle voices. The concept of childhood as a time of play and discovery simply doesn't exist. You live in a world where life is short, brutal, and unjust, where your worth is measured in obedience and pain tolerance, where crying is useless and hope is dangerous. But every once in a while, after a storm, when the air smells clean and the fire crackles warmly, your mother hums a lullaby, a tune passed down from her mother and her mother before that. The words are soft, worn smooth like a prayer. You lie there, barely breathing, afraid to move and break the spell. In that fragile moment, you feel something strange, something like safety. And then the church bell rings. It's morning again, time to suffer. Chapter 14, The Miracle of Bread and Fear, a medieval child's diet. It's midday now, or at least, that's what your stomach tells you. You don't have a sundial. You don't need one. Hunger is your clock, and it ticks loud in your belly. You've been awake for hours, worked to the edge of collapse, and now it's time for food, or what passes for food in this age of dirt, devotion, and disease. But don't imagine a feast. No golden turkeys, no roasted vegetables glistening in oil, no warm loaf steaming on a wooden table with a knife to share. There is bread, and not even the bread you know, not the kind with a soft inside and a crusty shell. No, this is black bread, and it might just fight back. You're a peasant child, remember, you don't eat for pleasure, you eat to survive. The bread arrives in a hunk the size of your balled fist, but 10 times harder. It's made from rye, coarse, bitter, and flecked with strange black specks. No, not seeds. That's ergot, a poisonous fungus. But no one knows that yet. To your family, it's just part of the loaf, baked in with the rest. If you're unlucky, it will make you sick. If you're very unlucky, it'll drive you mad. Convulsions, hallucinations, burning sensations in your limbs, as if the devil himself were reaching up through your stomach to drag you down. They call it holy fire, a fitting name for something that scorches its way through entire villages, and is somehow still considered a normal risk of eating. But that's for now. You're just gnawing at the crust like a desperate mouse, soaking it in a bit of weak ale, so it doesn't chip your remaining teeth. The bread is dark, not just in color, but in spirits. It's made with ground acorns, bean husks, bits of old flour swept off the mill floor, and sometimes even clay. Yes, clay. It's filler, because grain is precious, and survival doesn't leave room for Your mother baked it on the hearthstone after scraping together whatever was left from last week's batch. You'd think it was made with love. It was made with desperation. To wash it down, you drink ale. Not a pint, just a cup. It's weak, more like fermented cereal than alcohol, but it's safer than water. Water, even from the village well, is foul, polluted by runoff, rotting leaves, and sometimes worse. You don't want to know what's upstream, so even children drink ale. It's tradition, it's survival, it's routine. You don't get drunk, but you do get numb, and that helps when the bread bites back. If you're lucky, there's pottage, that same eternal stew you had at breakfast. It's thicker now, boiled down through the morning, a glob of root vegetables, maybe a few beans, and what's this? A sliver of meat. Your eyes widen. Meat is rare. It usually only graces your bowl when something dies. A chicken, perhaps, or a rabbit that wandered too close. You're not entirely sure what it is, but you don't ask. You just eat. Spoilage is a constant threat. Meat goes bad fast without salt or smoke, and spices, forget it. A single ounce of pepper costs more than your father earns in a month, so everything tastes like everything else. Earthy, oily, and vaguely sour. You eat from a communal bowl with shared wooden spoons, or if there aren't enough spoons, you use fingers. Sometimes you fight over the crust that formed on the side. It's the best part, slightly smoky, oddly sweet, and proof that flavor can survive in this age. The pottage fills you, or seems to, but an hour later, your stomach groans again.
That's the trick of medieval food. It exists, but it doesn't satisfy. Your body burns through it like fire through straw, and you're always just one bad harvest away from nothing. Famine is a ghost that hangs over every field, every family, a single year of bad weather, and you're chewing boiled bark just to stay upright. If your family has a pig, it's a treasure. If your village has a cow, it's communal gold. But mostly, you live off plants, barley, rye, oats, beans. Every meal is a variation on a theme, brown, bland, and barely enough. And yet you give thanks, always thanks, because it could be worse. You've seen worse. Children with bloated bellies, infants too weak to cry, and the elderly wasting away like dried husks. Hunger doesn't just hurt, it haunts. Once in a while, a festival comes to town, a saint's day, a wedding, a miracle, and for one precious evening, the food flows. Roasted meat, sweetened pies, hard cheese. Your eyes dance with wonder, your fingers tremble as you reach for a bite, but that's rare, and it never lasts. The next day, it's back to crusts and stew, bark and broth. The feast becomes a memory, soft and shining, like sunlight in the cold. Food, like everything else, is tied to status. The rich dine on white bread, fine, soft, sifted from the best wheat. They eat swan and eel, beef glazed in honey, pears preserved in vinegar. Their meals are served in courses, announced by servants. You're grateful for turnips. Even the act of cooking is dangerous. Fires consume huts in minutes. A stray spark, an unattended pot, and your home becomes a pyre. More than one child has perished that way, too close to the hearth, too curious with a ladle. But without the fire, there is no food, and without food there is no life. Your body aches from labor, yes, but also from lack. Bones grow slower on meager diets. Teeth rot faster when the only chewables are hard crusts and dirty nails. Your parents worry, but can do little. They are starving too. You see the worry in their eyes when you ask for more. You learn not to ask. You learn that silence is a kind of gratitude. You eat what is given. You say your thanks. You pray it's enough. And so midday ends. Your belly is never full, but it's quieter now. You chew the last crust, licking your fingers even if they taste of smoke and splinters. Your sister picks a flea off her sleeve. Your brother stares at a beetle crawling across the floor, wondering if it's edible. You rise. The bowl is empty. The bell tolls again. Work calls. The field waits. Hunger, your constant companion, walks beside you, always 2 steps behind. Tomorrow's meal is not promised, only hoped for, and so the miracle of bread continues. Not a feast, not a luxury, but a slow, painful assurance that for today at least, you were not the one who starved. Chapter 15. The Little Sins of Children, Punishment, Discipline, and Medieval Justice. The village is quiet again. The sun lingers low, stretching shadows like long arms across the hard-packed earth. The stillness is uneasy, not peaceful. Children, though often loud and unruly, have suddenly gone silent. A hush has settled, thick as wool. Something happened. A chicken stolen, a pitcher broken, a word spoken when it shouldn't have been. You can feel it in your bones, even before you hear your name shouted. Discipline in the Middle Ages doesn't arrive gently. It doesn't reason. It doesn't explain. It lands, fast, sharp, and often brutal. You freeze. Your little hands tremble. You didn't mean to. Maybe you really did nothing at all. But fairness is not the point. Justice, in your world, is about order, not truth. The authority of parents, priests, lords. It must be obeyed, unquestioned. And when it is not, pain is the tutor. You're dragged forward, not by a stranger, but by someone you love. A father, a mother, a neighbor. Their faces are stone, but you see the guilt flicker behind their eyes. Even they don't want this. But this is how it has always been. You are a child, and that is your only defense. And it is not enough. A wooden rod is brought forth. Not thick, not heavy, but it doesn't need to be. The blows are not wild. They are precise, practiced, delivered, not in anger, but with the solemn weight of tradition. The rod to the back, the thighs, the hands, not to kill, only to correct. But you cry all the same. Pain is memory's oldest teacher. Your lesson will not be forgotten. In some households, punishment is milder, only scolding, or banishment to the corner. But not here, not for peasant children. A mistake is not a personal flaw, it is a threat to survival. If you break the pitcher, there's no second one. If you trample the seedling, there is no other crop. A single moment of mischief can ripple into disaster, and so the punishments are swift, often public. The humiliation is part of the ritual. You are made into a warning for the others. In towns, things are worse. Formal punishments for older children might involve stocks or even shackles. You've seen a boy locked by his neck in a wooden frame, forced to stand as villagers spit or laugh. His crime: stealing a crust of bread from the bakery's window ledge. He was only 10. Sometimes it's not even about behavior. A child is whipped for speaking out of turn during math, for forgetting Latin responses, for dreaming too long, when he should be sweeping. In the monastery schools, discipline is sacred. Teachers carry birch rods, not as decoration, but as constant reminders. Every wrong answer brings a strike. Every stumble is a sin. And yes, there are little ones. A lie, a complaint, a murmur of envy. These are not just childish errors. They are marks against your soul. The priest says so. Confession is offered, but punishment often comes first. Some believe the rod saves the soul, others just want silence. Girls are not spared. They too are punished, but with a special emphasis on modesty, obedience, silence. A girl who is too loud, too curious, too bold, she is a threat. A future wife must be meek, quiet, skilled in the home. Discipline bends her toward that shape. Resistance is trimmed away, and yet children still rebel. They steal apples. They wander to the stream when told not to. They speak after the curfew bell. Sometimes they run. You once knew a boy who fled the village after striking his uncle with a stick. No one ever found him. His name was never spoken again. Perhaps he froze. Perhaps he was taken by wolves. Or worse, men. Punishment doesn't just live in the home. The entire world enforces it. Lords punish their serfs' children. Priests punish the sinful. Masters punish apprentices. And always, the whipping boy is close. In noble houses, when a prince cannot be struck, his low-born companion takes the beating instead. There is something grotesque in it, but no one questions it. Pain is considered the architect of character. You wonder sometimes whether all children are punished this way. You've heard of noble boys who study philosophy, who read Greek, who have tutors instead of rods. But you don't know any of them. You only know the lash, and the silence that follows. After the beating, the world carries on. No one speaks of it. Your mother may cry later, softly, into her apron. Your father may look away, ashamed, but the act is done. You are expected to be better now. You try, but you're still a child. The line between punishment and abuse doesn't exist in this world. There are no laws to protect you, no shelters, no counselors. A child belongs to the family, and the family answers to the Lord, who answers to no one. Still, not all is cruelty. There is gentleness too, in rare places. A grandmother who hides you behind her skirts. A brother who takes your place in the scolding. A priest who, instead of striking, tells you a story of saints who were children once too. But even saints suffered. They must. Suffering is how virtue is proved. So you endure. You rub your stinging hands, lower your head, and return to your chores. The lesson is over. Until the next time. Because in this world, childhood is not protected. It is shaped roughly, painfully, and always in fear. And still, somehow, you love, you laugh, you dream, despite it all. Chapter 16. The Whispering Shadows. When the village sleeps, the fire's gone cold. Only a few embers remain, glowing like dying stars at the edge of the hearth. Barely clinging to their warmth, the cottage is still, save for the occasional pop from the last log, exhaling a final sigh of heat into the damp, stale air. You're not asleep. No one really sleeps in the Middle Ages. Not in the way we think of it today. You drift, maybe. You nod off. But peace, that's a luxury reserved for saints and the dead. Your body aches from the day's labor. Your stomach is a hollow drum. Your hands still swollen from work. You lie curled under your wool blanket, stiff with old grime and peppered with burrs. Around you, a concert of snores, sniffles, and coughs fills the air. Your sister twitches in her sleep beside you.
muttering nonsense to ghosts only she can hear. The baby's lips flutter with shallow breaths, and somewhere in the dark, a rat gnaws at a crust of bread stolen from the ashes. Night in the medieval village is never truly silent. There's always some sound, the creak of a timber beam above your head, the flutter of a bat in the rafters, the sigh of wind leaking through the thatch like a whisper. Darkness is not your friend. It's a living, breathing thing. A velvet curtain that conceals, yes, but also hunts, with no streetlights, no night lamps, and no protective glow of electricity. The night is pure and absolute. You hear it, so does everyone else. A low, distant howl, not a wolf. Not this time. It's old Myra, the widow who lives near the stream. She wails at night, sometimes out of grief, sometimes out of madness, sometimes for reasons no one dares ask. They say she speaks to her dead husband, or the devil, or both. You don't know, and you don't want to. You pull the blanket tighter and bury your face in your arm, trying to shut out the sound, but it seeps in, just like the cold, just like the fear, because nighttime in the Middle Ages is dangerous, not just because of what lurks in the woods, or waits down the path, but because of what lives inside people. Once the sun goes down, sleep brings dreams, yes, but it also brings demons. Nightmares weren't just bad dreams back then. They were visitation, evil spirits that sat on your chest, choking you, paralyzing you, whispering foul temptations into your soul. You know the stories. Everyone does. The mare that rides you into breathless horror, the hag that squats on your chest, her eyes like two coals. And if you wake up gasping, drenched in sweat with your arms frozen at your sides, well, that wasn't sleep paralysis. That was a real curse. Something malevolent. Maybe you forgot to pray. Maybe someone wished you ill. Maybe the devil simply felt bored. That's the thing about medieval superstition. It's not just belief. It's the operating system of your life. But you're not always asleep. In fact, most people in the Middle Ages practiced what's now called segmented sleep. The first sleep comes after nightfall. It lasts a few hours. Then you wake. Somewhere in the dead center of night, your brain alert, your body unsure. This is the hour of murmured prayers, hushed conversation of lying awake and trying not to listen to the creaks outside. If you're a peasant, this break might be used to tend the fire, to check on the animals, to stare blankly into the void. If you're a mother, this is when the baby stirs, whimpers, sucks blindly in the dark. If you're a child like you, this is the hour of fear. When shadows on the wall become faces, when the cold seeps into your marrow and your ears strain for sounds that don't belong. Sometimes the adults whisper in this hour, secrets, sins. They think the children are asleep, but your eyes are open, even if they can't see. You hear them talking about the bad harvest, about the black sickness in the next village, about something strange they saw in the woods, and worse, you hear the silence, that thick pause when something serious is said, something unholy, and no one dares speak again. Back to sleep, if you're lucky. That's your second sleep. It might last until dawn, or until the rooster crows, or until the village bell rings, or a drunk stumbles home, or someone's child wakes up screaming, because dreams are rarely sweet. Your dreams are not of candy and sunshine. They are thick, woolen dreams, filled with fear, fire and loss. You dream of wolves, of falling through holes in the ground, of your mother disappearing into the trees. Sometimes you dream of plague carts. Yes, you've seen them, not with your own eyes maybe, but they're in your memory, passed down from whispers and glances. The smell of bodies heaped together, the black hoods of the collectors, the songless silence of the streets. You dream of rats with red eyes and priests muttering Latin over bloated corpses. Sometimes your dream ends with you waking up to a pustule on your arm. You scratch it. It grows. You scream, and then you wake for real, maybe, and outside, the forest is alive, not with fairies or gentle deer, with things that bite, wolves, wild men, spirits. If you're lucky you never meet them, but luck runs thin in this century. No fences, no luck, just your locked door, if you have one, and your prayers. If you were noble you might have guards. If you were a monk, maybe the chapel bell, and a sanctuary wall, but you're just a child, in a wooden hovel, with a latch. Sometimes you think about God, or try to, but it's hard to believe he's listening when you're curled up beside your siblings with lice crawling through your hair and the scent of mold in your lungs. The priest says to pray, but he doesn't sleep here.
You do. Still you whisper the Lord's Prayer, half asleep, half hoping, mouthing Latin words you barely understand, as if rhythm itself can save you. Some nights something worse than wolves prowls. Men, drunken men from the edge of town, thieves, soldiers, or worse, taxmen. They knock at doors after midnight, not because they expect answers, but because fear is a message. They break locks. They take what little you have, your father's last shoe, a chicken, your sister, and no one stops them. In the morning people will pretend they didn't hear. They always do. That's the terror of medieval night. It's not just what you can see, it's what you must survive while unseen. You learn not to cry out, not to speak, not to ask. You grow up fast, or you don't grow up at all. Night teaches you things, about hunger, about danger, about silence, but it also teaches you patience, that nothing lasts forever, not even the dark. Eventually the first threads of dawn sneak through the thatch. A soft blue, a rooster croaks, more of a cough than a crow. A cart rattles in the distance, the sound of hooves. You open your eyes, you're still here, still alive. The night didn't take you, not this time, but it always waits. Chapter 17, The Church and the Child, Salvation or Servitude. The bell tolls, not a loud commanding chime like the ones from castles or cathedrals. No, this one is tired, rusted, weary, like the bones of the village it hangs over. It clangs 3 times, calling the faithful to mass, or perhaps just reminding them that even misery must kneel. You're awake before the sound, of course. You always are. The body learns to anticipate suffering in the Middle Ages. The ache in your joints is your morning bell. You sit up, on the straw mattress, brushing away beetles and the droppings of whatever crept over you in the dark. You are 7 years old, maybe 8. You're not sure. Nobody really keeps count. But you're old enough to walk, old enough to fear, and that means you're old enough to kneel. Today is a holy day, though what that means exactly depends on your place in the village hierarchy. For the priest, it's a day of chants, wine and solemn ritual. For your father it's a chance to murmur sins and beg mercy. For your mother it's a chance to pray for rain. And for you, it's an hour or 2 of stiff silence, the smell of incense, and maybe if the priest is generous a dry, stale wafer pressed onto your tongue. You dress in your cleanest shirt, which means it only has 2 holes. Your hands are filthy, your nails crusted, but your mother licks her thumb and wipes a smudge from your cheek with a frown. That's about as much preparation as you'll get for the presence of God. You walk to the church barefoot. Everyone does. Boots are for the rich. You're not one of them. The stones are cold and jagged. You step around dung, stagnant puddles, and the bones of small animals. The wind has teeth. This morning, you walk quickly, head down. The church is the largest building in your village. Simple stone, no real ornamentation, but still it rises like a mountain of meaning in your tiny world. To you, it might as well be the center of the universe, not because it's beautiful, but because it decides whether you will burn in hell. Inside it's dim and musty. Candles flicker along the cracked stone walls. The windows are small, more slits than panes, letting in just enough light to cast long, accusing shadows. You take your place among the other children, near the back, out of sight and out of mind. The air smells of smoke, mildew and sanctity. You're not sure which is worse. The priest enters in robes far finer than anything you've ever worn, though still frayed, still patched. He speaks Latin, a language of mystery and magic, and no one understands a word, but you bow your head anyway. Not understanding is part of the ritual. God doesn't need you to comprehend, only to obey. There's the muttering of prayers, the shuffle of knees onto the cold stone floor. You kneel, then you kneel again, then you stand, then kneel. Your legs burn, your back cracks, but the routine is comforting in a strange way, like the rhythm of the seasons. Pain, but expected. Then comes the part that both frightens and fascinates you, the sermon. The priest speaks of sin, always sin. It's everywhere, in your hands, in your thoughts, in your tongue. You were born into it. Even a newborn child carries the weight of original sin. You remember Father Henry shouting once, "Even the babe in arms is steeped in corruption." And everyone nodded. You did too, because you believe him. Of course you do. What else is there to believe? The church owns your afterlife. It also controls much of your present. It decides who is clean, who can marry, who can be buried in the cemetery. If you step out of line, steal, speak out, defy, it is not just a matter of law. It is a matter of the soul. Eternal damnation awaits. And for children, this is terrifying. Hell is not an abstract concept to you. It is described in vivid, grotesque detail. Flames, hooks, worms, devils with pitchforks. You've seen them in the illustrations, painted on the walls, carved into wood. You've heard the screams described. You've felt them in your dreams. And heaven, that is harder to picture. A place of peace, but also silence, obedience, submission. You don't know if it's better than the life you live, or simply more of the same, but with golden wall. After Mass, the priest sometimes speaks to the children directly. He teaches you about the saints, about martyrdom, about sacrifice. He tells stories of little girls burned for refusing to renounce Christ, and boys who plucked out their own eyes to avoid temptation. These are your heroes. You nod solemnly, trying not to think about the lice in your hair, or the scab on your leg. Sometimes he'll quiz you, about the 10 Commandments, about the Creed. If you answer correctly, you are praised. If not, you are struck, or sent to the corner to kneel on peas. You hate the pea. Their sharp edges dig into your knees. Punishment through prayer. But worse than the peas is the threat of being given to the church. Some children are, if your family has too many mouths to feed, or if your father wishes to show piety, you may be sent to a monastery, or a convent. You'll be clothed, yes, and fed, perhaps, but you will belong to them, your hair shaved, your name forgotten, days filled with silence and prayer, and cleaning chamber pots. You will never marry, you will never return, and yet, some envy those children, because they are warm, because they are safe, because they don't fear wolves at night. And for girls, the church may be the only place they are not sold off like cattle before puberty. You wonder, sometimes, if that will be your fate. You wonder if it would be so bad. But the church is not just rituals and threats. It is also the keeper of miracles. You hear of relics that heal, bones of saints that glow, pieces of the true cross locked away in chests. You see pilgrims arrive, limping, bleeding, praying. You see the priest lay hands on their heads. Some leave smiling, others leave dead. Still, hope is precious, and the church sells it in small, expensive doses. If you're lucky, you'll be taught to read a few words. Psalms, maybe, the Latin phrases of prayer, but books are rare. One Bible can cost as much as a house, and only the monks read fluently, not people like you. The most sacred thing you ever touch is holy water, cold, sharp on the fingertips. You cross yourself like you've been taught, forehead, chest, shoulder, shoulder. The devil hates this, they say, but he's never stopped visiting your dreams. Eventually Mass ends. You leave the church, as you came, in silence, head down, back into the wind, back onto the dirt path. But you feel different, not cleansed, no, just reminded that someone is always watching, that sin never sleeps, and that the church is the only door to mercy, even if that door is made of iron, even if it only opens from the inside. You walk home, and your mother sighs in relief that the Lord hasn't taken you yet. Your father says nothing, but crosses himself. You help sweep the floor, boil water, pull splinters from firewood. But all day, one thought lingers. You were born into sin, and only death may end it. Chapter 18. The Fear of the Future. The stars have shifted slightly outside your shutterless window, though you wouldn't know it. There's no clock ticking down the hours, no glowing phone screen to distract you from the dread curling in your stomach. Just the ache in your bones, and the whisper of the cold wind through the timber cracks. You're no longer a child in the way the modern world defines. You're entering that strange twilight of medieval youth, where play is replaced by pressure, and tomorrow is no longer just another version of today. You are, perhaps, 11 or 12 now, old enough to know how the world works, too young to do much about it. The innocence, such as it was, is fading. You've buried a sibling. You've learned not to cry during a beating. You've heard the word future, but it never sounds hopeful. No one asks what you want to be when you grow up, because in this world, growing up is not a dream, it's a sentence. If you're a peasant child, the path ahead is set. Your future is not a bright horizon, but a tightening noose of inevitability. You will work the land your parents worked, die younger than they did, and possibly never travel farther than 5 miles from where you were born. Your muscles already ache from tasks that would break a modern adult. By the time you're 13, your hands are calloused, your back bent, and your spirit hardened by repetition. But you don't question it. because everyone around you is enduring the same, and that is how the system survives. If you're a girl, the fear of the future comes wrapped in marriage cloth. You've begun to bleed. You don't talk about it, but the old women know, so do the men. Your body is no longer yours. A mother whispers warnings between laundry and soup, speaking of men with rough hands and worse breath. You are being watched now, by the widow next door, by your father's cousin, by anyone in need of a young, obedient wife. You will be married off not for love, but for goats, for grain, for social ties forged over fermented ale. At 14, you might be pregnant. At 15, a mother. At 16, if you survive childbirth, you've beaten the odds. But survival does not mean safety. The fear of childbirth in medieval times was absolute. A woman knew that to lie down in labor was to gamble with death. No painkillers, no sanitation, just screams, herbs, and the prayers of a midwife who might have delivered her own children straight into the grave. For boys, the future might involve the church, but only if your family can scrape together the bribes to buy you into a monastery. You don't choose religion, it chooses you. And once inside those cold stone walls, the silence is deafening. Discipline is harsh. The future is cloaked in chants and Latin you barely understand. If you're stronger, you're conscripted. War is always simmering somewhere. A dispute over borders, a noble's pride, a king's whim. And if your lord calls for soldiers, you do not refuse. Refusing is treason. Treason is death. You don't even get armor. Maybe a wooden shield, a dull blade, marching orders from someone who sees you as little more than meat in motion. You've never seen a map, but someone tells you the village next door is being raided. You can hear the distant sounds of destruction. Screams are carried on the wind like news. That fear, once only theoretical, is now a shadow that crawls under your skin. And then, there's always the plague. Even if you survive the farm, the war, the marriage, the winter, something unseen might still take you. The Black Death isn't just a chapter in a textbook here, it's a ghost in the air. You've seen people turn black and die in days. You've helped bury bodies in mass grave. You've watched priests flee before helping. When it comes, it does not knock. It kicks down the door, rots your family from the inside, and leaves your village in silence. Hope is a fragile thing here, but it exists. You hear a story from an old peddler of a town where girls learn to write, of a merchant who rose from nothing, of a runaway boy who became a knight. You don't know if these stories are true, but in the darkness, even lies feel warm. Sometimes you hold on to them, like a child clutching a broken toy, because what else is there? You dream, but quietly. You whisper your wishes into the hay, hoping the rats don't carry them away. You wonder what it's like to wear shoes that fit, to taste sugar, to read a book without pictures of demons. But mostly you try to stay alive, to avoid angering the wrong people, to not grow too far, to not be noticed by the cruel, or recruited by the powerful, or sacrificed by the desperate. That's the trick to surviving medieval youth. Keep your head down, and your expectations lower, because tomorrow is not a promise, it's a and so you drift off to sleep again, not with peace, but with resignation. Somewhere outside, a wolf howls. Somewhere inside, your mother coughs blood into a rag, and hides it under straw. You turn over on your lice-ridden blanket, and squeeze your eyes shut. Maybe, just maybe, tomorrow won't come. And in that moment, for a child of 1325, that's the closest thing to comfort.
Chapter 19. The Bitter Cold of Winter. Winter in the Middle Ages was a different kind of beast. It wasn't like the snowy seasons we imagine today, filled with the warmth of cozy fireplaces and hot drinks. For those living in the medieval world, winter meant death. It meant hunger, sickness, and exposure, an unforgiving test of survival. Imagine waking up in the dead of night, cold seeping through the cracks of the thatched roof above you, the chill of the stone walls biting at your bones. The fire has long gone out, and the only warmth you have is the heat from the bodies of your family huddled together on the single straw mattress. But it's not enough. There's no heat source left to ward off the icy breath of winter's grip. As dawn breaks, the frost on your bedchamber's floor glistens, a cruel reminder of the night's cold. The ground is hard, your body stiff from hours spent shivering in the dark. You roll over, and as you push yourself up, The straw mattress crunches with the weight of the cold, and you feel every single crack in your joints. You're 25 years old, but your body already feels like it's weathered decades of suffering. You pull your woolen tunic tighter, trying to block out the frost and the numbing wind that howls through the cracks in the walls. There's no privacy, no luxury, just the harsh reality of survival. The house smells like wet animal skin and damp wool, combined with the stainless of urine soaked into the floor. The faint scent of smoke from last night's fire lingers in the air, but it's not comforting. It's just another reminder of how little warmth you truly have. You can't help but think about your breath, how it rises from your mouth in little puffs of steam, and how it's all you have to show for yourself in this cold, cruel world. Stepping out of bed, you wince as your feet meet the cold floor, the ground sticky with last night's rain. You make your way toward the hearth, your feet slapping against the stone, wishing you could find any warmth, but the fire has gone out long ago. The logs are nothing more than smoldering embers, far too cold to offer any comfort. Winter is particularly harsh in these times. Without the luxury of modern insulation or the heat of central heating, the peasantry suffered the most. They lived in hovels, poorly insulated and with no means of keeping the outside world at bay. Even the nobility couldn't escape the brutal cold. Though their stone castles may have offered some protection, the cold still seeped into every crack, leaving the lords and ladies shivering in their halls. As you stand by the hearth, you grab a chunk of stale bread, stale enough to crack your teeth, but it's all you have. The bread is heavy and hard as if it was baked weeks ago, yet it's your only source of sustenance. You tear off a piece with your teeth, chewing it slowly, savoring each bitter, tasteless bite. It's the only meal you'll get for the next several hours, maybe longer. There's no meat, no cheese, nothing to comfort you. You hear the soft rustling of your siblings stirring from their sleep, their quiet coughs echoing through the room. Winter's grip tightens on your family, and you can feel it in the weariness of their eyes, the droop of their shoulders. Everyone is already exhausted, their bodies thinner than they were last summer, skins stretched tight over bones that ache with hunger. They've spent months in this cold, just scraping by, and it's beginning to show. Your father stirs, his face drawn and hollow from days of laboring in the fields or the forest, always seeking firewood to keep the hearth alive. But this year it's been particularly difficult. The bitter winds have stripped the trees of their leaves, leaving only bare branches, and the once rich forests where you used to find firewood are now barren. No matter how much you try, the firewood isn't enough to keep the warmth in. Every day feels colder than the last. Winter has its way of driving its point home. Life is fragile, and death is always close, lurking beneath the icy surface of this hard season. You step outside and the cold air slaps you awake, a shock to your system. Your breath is visible in the air, sharp and freezing. The ground is covered in frost, and the wind bites at your face, making your eyes water. You shiver, even through the thick layers of wool and linen you've put on. In the village, things aren't much better. You see the thin, hunched figures of other peasants, all trudging through the snow, carrying buckets, gathering firewood or searching for food. The village feels quieter, more subdued. The usual chatter of people talking in the streets has died down, replaced by the silence of hunger and desperation. The cold has stolen the warmth from the homes and hearts of everyone. You cross paths with an old woman who's limping along with a wooden stick. She's wrapped in rags, her face pinched and pale. Her once black hair is now white as snow, and her breath is a series of ragged coughs. She's a symbol of survival, of how the elderly manage to keep going despite the toll the years have taken. But you can see it in her eyes, the exhaustion, the weariness, the toll that the bitter season has taken on her. Even the children are quieter. There's no laughter or play in the streets, no chasing each other through the mud or rolling in the snow. The joy of childhood has been replaced by hunger and fear. You pass one of the local boys, his stomach swollen, his eyes sunken. The winter has brought starvation with it, and those who were already weak are dying in silence. For the villagers, the cold has become a silent enemy, one that kills slowly, one that creeps up on you when you least expect it. For them it's not just a season, it's a battle, a test of endurance. You can't escape it. It's everywhere, in the numbness of your fingers, in the dull ache in your bones, in the way you can never feel warm enough. The days feel longer, and the nights colder. Winter isn't just a season, it's an experience that claws at your very soul. As you make your way back to your home, the day drags on with no promise of relief. The village is on edge, and everyone seems to be bracing for something worse. whether it's another frost, a lack of food, or worse still, sickness creeping in from the cold. The little warmth you can scrape together isn't enough to fend off the feeling of doom that hangs over your head. When night falls, the cold deepens, and the sounds of the village soften. The houses are darker now, with only the occasional flicker of a fire to light the way. Inside, your family huddles together once again, wrapped in woolen blankets, trying to find warmth in each other's presence. There is no joy, no comfort in this dark, bitter season, only the quiet struggle for survival. Outside, the wind howls like a beast, a constant reminder of how small and fragile you are in this cold, indifferent world. Yet despite the cold, despite the hunger, despite the fear, you endure. You keep pushing forward because you have no other choice. In the Middle Ages, winter didn't just test your body, it tested your spirit, your will to survive. And for those who made it through, it was a victory in itself. But no matter how many winters you survive, there is always the sense that the next one may be the one you don't make it through. Chapter 20, The Great Famine. The winter winds howl through the cracks in the wooden walls, carrying with them the bitter chill of a world in torment. Inside the small, dimly lit hut, the cold is unbearable. The fire in the hearth struggles against the chill, its flickering flames casting long, jagged shadows that stretch across the room like the fingers of some unseen beast. The floorboards are damp. The thatched roof groans under the weight of the snow that has accumulated in the night. It's a cold you feel deep in your bones, a cold that seeps into your very soul. Outside, the fields lie barren, the crops destroyed by an unseasonable frost that came too early in the year. The animals are lean and sickly, their once plump bodies, now mere husks of their former self. Hunger has become a constant companion, one that gnaws at your insides with each passing day. It's the kind of hunger that settles deep in your chest, leaving you weak, dizzy, and unable to think of anything other than the ache that never seems to go away. It's been months since you've had a decent meal. There was a time not so long ago when the fields were full of life, when the animals grazed contentedly, and when the village was a place of relative peace. But that was before the famine, before the crops failed, before the sickness swept through the village like wildfire, and before the food ran out. The elders speak in hushed tones of the years before, of the harvests that once filled the granaries, of the feasts that were shared with neighbors and friends. But those days feel like a distant memory now, a dream that was never meant to last. The land that once provided sustenance now stands barren, the soil cracked and dry. The streams that once ran clear have turned to trickles of stagnant water, tainted by the rot that has seeped into the earth. You wake early, as you always do, the hunger clawing at you as you roll out of bed. The cold is even worse in the morning, the fire having long since died down to a pile of glowing embers. You shiver as you stretch, your joints stiff and sore from the lack of food and warmth. Your mother is already at the hearth, her thin fingers working tirelessly to prepare what little they can muster for the day's meal. It's usually a thin porridge, made with the last scraps of grain, boiled with a few wilted herbs. But even that is running out. You should eat, child, your mother says, her voice weak and distant. There's not much, but it'll be enough. You don't argue. There's no point in arguing anymore. The food has always been scarce, but now it's more than just an inconvenience. It's a matter of survival. Every morsel feels like a precious gift, even if it doesn't fill the emptiness inside. You take your portion, swallowing the tasteless slop as quickly as you can, knowing that there won't be enough to fill you for the day. It's the same every day now, starving, waiting, hoping for something, anything to change. The days stretch on in a blur of cold, hunger and exhaustion. You spend your time gathering what little you can find, wild herbs, roots, any small game that might wander too close. You have learned to be resourceful, to make do with whatever scraps are left behind by the rest of the village. But the village is running out of resources too. There are fewer mouths to feed now, fewer people left to share what little remains. Those who haven't yet succumbed to hunger or disease are hoarding what they have, and the once tight community is starting to fracture under the pressure. You can see it in the eyes of the people, the desperation that is slowly replacing the warmth and camaraderie that once existed. People who used to greet each other with smiles and kind words now avoid one another, fearful that a simple conversation might lead to a fight over the last loaf of bread or the last handful of grain. Neighbors who once shared everything now guard their food as if it's the last treasure they'll ever see. There is no charity, no kindness, only survival. The village, once a bustling place filled with the sounds of children playing, is eerily quiet. There are fewer children now, their bodies too frail to survive the harshness of the world. The women, once strong and proud, have become shadows of their former selves.
their faces drawn and hollow, their eyes sunken with the weight of the hunger that gnaws at them. And the men, those who have survived the diseases, the hunger and the harsh weather, are little more than shells of the strong, capable figures they once were. You pass by one of the houses, and the door is cracked open, the smell of death wafting out. Inside you see the bodies of those who have not made it, their faces twisted in pain, their bodies emaciated. It is a scene you have seen before, bodies piled up in homes, in fields, in the streets. There's no ceremony, no mourning. The dead are left where they fall, abandoned by those who are too weak or too afraid to help. The living are too concerned with their own survival to worry about the dead. As you make your way through the village, you catch sight of the local priest. He's standing near the small chapel staring out at the barren fields. His robes are tattered, his face drawn and gaunt, but his eyes are still filled with a fierce determination. He has been praying for the end of the famine, for a miracle for salvation. But there's nothing, no miracle, no divine intervention, just more suffering, more death. You approach him unsure of what to say, but he sees you and beckons you closer. His voice is soft, filled with sorrow. It is a test of faith, my child. We must endure, for there is no other choice. But you can't bring yourself to respond. The words feel empty. You've heard them before, heard the prayers, the pleas, the promises of salvation. But salvation never comes. All that comes is more hunger, more death, more despair. That night as you lie in bed, the hunger gnawing at your insides, you think about what the priest said. Endure. But how much longer can you endure? How much longer can anyone endure? The days stretch on, and the hope that once lingered in your heart is starting to fade, replaced by the cold realization that survival is a fragile thing. The world is harsh, unforgiving, and no amount of prayer or faith will change that. You close your eyes and try to sleep, but the hunger keeps you awake. The wind howls outside, and you shiver beneath your thin blanket, wishing for warmth, for food, for something to ease the gnawing pain in your stomach. But there is nothing. There is only the cold, the hunger and the dark emptiness that surrounds you. And as you drift off into a restless, fitful sleep, you wonder how long it will be before the hunger takes you to. Chapter 21. The shifting tides of fate. The dawn light breaks over the village, casting a cold, pale glow across the frost-covered landscape. The earth is still frozen beneath a blanket of snow, and the sky above is a muted grey, heavy with the weight of more to come. The seasons have shifted, but not in the way anyone had hoped. The great famine that had torn through the land, leaving devastation in its wake, is not yet over. The fields remain barren, the animals lean and sickly, and hope feels like a distant memory, a concept too far out of reach to hold on to for long. Yet today is different. It's as if the world itself has held its breath, waiting for something to change. In the midst of all the suffering, there is the faintest glimmer of something new, a whisper in the wind, a shift in the air that you can't quite put your finger on. Perhaps it's the desperation that has driven people to do things they once thought impossible. Or perhaps it's simply the natural order of things. The way the world always seems to find a way to turn, even in the darkest of times. You wake early, as you always do. The cold grips you immediately, its icy fingers crawling beneath the thin layers of cloth that cover you. But there's no time to dwell on the cold or the hunger. Today, something has changed, and you can feel it in your bones. The village is stirring in a way it hasn't in months. The usual quiet is replaced with hushed murmurs, with a sense of anticipation hanging heavy in the air. The villagers, thin and weary, shuffle through the streets with a new energy, as if they've caught wind of something that promises a way out, a way forward. As you step outside, the air stings your skin, sharp and unforgiving. You pull your cloak tightly around you, the cold seeping through the fabric, and make your way down the narrow, snow-covered path toward the heart of the village. The ground beneath your feet crunches with every step, the silence almost unbearable. But there is movement today. Something is happening. At the village square, a small crowd has gathered, their faces drawn with hunger and despair, but their eyes are light with something else. Hope. The village elders stand at the center, their figures stark against the backdrop of the frozen landscape. There's a sense of urgency in their movements, a quiet intensity that draws everyone's attention. Whispers of something, a promise, a plan, a chance, flit through the crowd like flickers of light in the dark. You move closer, drawn by the magnetic pull of the unknown. The elders are speaking in low tones, their voices barely audible above the wind, but their words carry weight. You strain to hear. It's a long shot, one of the elders says, his voice cracking from years of hardship. But it's the only shot we have. The others nod grimly, exchanging looks that carry the burden of years of decisions made under duress. There is something in their gaze, a quiet understanding, a bond forged through shared speed, a turning point that leads to salvation. Only time will tell, but for now the journey has begun.